So, because I started TikTok like 10 minutes ago because I'm trying to figure shit out. Yes, we are live. Biscuit, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure, man. Like I'm the same guy from same Biscuit from the conversation that we had before. You interrupted my cry session, bro. Like, when's the last time when you sent your last email? When's the last time you cried? Is there something that makes you cry? Is there a song? Is there a movie?
Anything.
Or is there a book?
Anything by the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or Britney Spears makes me cry, but it's more like a cry of pain.
Bro, for real. I'm being for real. Like, is there a movie or something that's like you feel on that level that like makes you misty-eyed? Do you have
a lot
those
of them,
experiences?
Actually. Yeah, I have a lot of them. So like, I really liked Pokemon, like the first Pokemon movie with Mewtwo where Ash like dies and Pikachu dies. I cried during that when I was like 8 or whatever.
See, no, I'm talking about today. Like, is there something today that if you watch it, like, oh snap, this is a part that's going to cause me to get misty-eyed?
I mean, I think there are a lot of anime that I watched that do that are really sad, like Evergreen, what's it, Violet Evergarden. That one was pretty sad.
There's a song, bro, by Anthony Hamilton and Music Soul Child about to do like a versus battle. But there's a song by Anthony Hamilton called Charlene. And bro, it's the most soulful and most tragic chorus. And when that song, like when he goes off in the third chorus of that, bro, I get misty. And I was getting misty-eyed, bro, having a moment. And that's when you sent your little, your email talking about, hey, I'll see you in an hour. And I was like, bro, you destroyed my moment, bro. But arguments for the existence of God. I wanted to start off. You said that you start with the foundation of I think, therefore I am, right? You said that before, at least.
Yes, for my epistemology.
Right. Do you not find that circular?
No.
Why not? Being that it starts with I and ends with, so you're trying to prove I am, and then you start with I think.
Because it's descriptive. So it's like saying the sky is blue. The sky is blue isn't a circular argument. It's just describing what your experience is. So if you have an experience of just like you're experiencing stuff, the statement, I think, therefore I am, is just a description of the experience, like the statement, the sky is blue. So it's not the argument. You don't gain the knowledge from the argument by looking at the premises and then reading the conclusion and then having some kind of like a realization that you exist. It's just a description of the experience. So if it was an argument where you're supposed to like understand the conclusion by looking at the premises, then yes, that would be circular, but it's not. It's just a description of your direct experience.
Okay, so I assumed that the therefore meant that the conclusion followed logically from the premise, because when you say this, therefore that, that's typically what we're talking about. If I say, my car is out of gas, therefore the ignition won't start. I'm saying A, therefore B, right? So what is the therefore if it's not an argument?
It's just a descriptive statement. So the sentence, none of the sentence matters. I could say exist or I exist or whatever. It doesn't make a difference what the sentence is. The sentence is just describing your experience. Your experience is there no matter how you change the sentence. Whether you take the therefore out or not, or change it with potato. I think, therefore potato. Or I think potato, I exist, or whatever. It doesn't change the experience. The experience you're having is the same. So all the sentence does...
I would rather say I am and use I as a variable that encapsulates your
nothing in the
experience.
sentence matters. The sentence is completely irrelevant. It's just a sentence. It describes an actually existing thing, which is your experience. You are having an experience, and all the sentence, I think, therefore I am, all that's doing is just describing the experience. So none of the sentence matters.
Why doesn't the sentence matter?
Because it's descriptive. It's like... language is arbitrary. You can use any word to mean anything you want. Like I can say blah, 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 and that means like rabbit or something. So you can use whatever words you want to describe something. Your description doesn't change the thing in and of itself.
But what you just said doesn't actually perform a communication function.
Right. This
so if you say blah, 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 blah,
doesn't matter.
That doesn't perform a communication function, right?
In a different society, it could. That doesn't matter. So the point here is that the words themselves are just descriptions of things in our society. It doesn't matter what they mean, because what matters is the thing itself is there. So because
if you're willing to let on board, I, therefore I, or I think, therefore I am, you're willing to let on other arguments on board that would suggest a similar thing.
sure.
For instance, God created the universe, therefore God exists.
No, because that wouldn't be a description. That would be an actual argument. Like if you're just describing something, like
so saying I think is saying there is an action that I'm doing, like I am thinking. Therefore,
no,
I am.
No,
I am
it's,
because I'm thinking.
again, it's just describing the direct experience you have, nothing more.
Sure, no, I understand that. So I think is an experience. You're saying I'm having an experience.
Sure.
Right. So you're saying I'm having an experience, therefore I exist.
It's all just describing the experience. Nothing about this argument can be circular. It can never be circular. This is literally defined. Like you go to the Wikipedia for cogito ergo sum, all the different philosophers say this. It cannot ever be circular. It's not an argument that you gain the knowledge from the conclusion. It's an argument that describes the knowledge you already have. So it's only circular if you gain
wasn't
the
Descartes
knowledge.
trying to prove his existence though? That was
No.
He was denying everything,
Right.
and he found that he couldn't deny that he was thinking.
Yeah.
And because he couldn't deny that he was thinking, he concluded that he had to exist as the person who's having the experience, right?
Yep.
So the argument is intending to show something. It's intending to prove something. It is an argument.
No, so not in that sense. No. So if you would need to go to the Wikipedia for cogito ergo sum and read through all the different usages and how it means something. It can never be invalidated. It's never ever circular. Ever. It can't be circular. By definition, it cannot be circular.
Well, I mean, I guess we can disagree on this before we move on.
It's not a disagreement. It's just literally fact in philosophy. This cannot be wrong. You don't get an option here. You can't argue against its semantics because the semantics are irrelevant.
Well, I mean, a lot of people in philosophy have said that it is circular.
No,
so I mean, I didn't make up that idea that it's circular.
Zero people in philosophy have said that. This is all crackpot Discord people.
Crackpot disc. That's funny. Yeah, no, the idea that I think therefore I am is circular is popular. That's a popular idea.
Not in philosophy. No. Like what they say is that Descartes' usages for the Cartesian dualism is circular. That's what Bertrand Russell said. Bertrand Russell said Descartes' usage to indicate that there is a soul thingy is circular because he's assuming ontology. And so in that case, his ontology of the soul is in the premise, which is begging the question. No one who actually uses it in today's meaning uses that way. So no one in philosophy thinks it's actually circular because you don't gain the knowledge from the premises.
So
but none of this has to do with like evidence for God.
Encyclopedia Britannica calls it the Cartesian Circle. The Cartesian Circle, allegedly circular reasoning used by René Descartes to show that whatever he perceives clearly and distinctly is true. Because it's circular, it doesn't follow that it's false.
No.
It's actually true.
The Cartesian Circle,
it is circular.
No, the Cartesian Circle is, again, as I said, when Descartes tried to indicate Cartesian dualism and that his soul must exist. The cogito itself is not a Cartesian Circle. Cartesian Circle is Descartes' usage of circular reasoning to indicate dualism. Has nothing to do with cogito. So I don't want to waste more time on this. Like if you want to bother with philosophers on this, you can go bother them. Like you can't be wrong. It can't be circular. It can never be incorrect. But none of this has anything to do with an evidence of God.
No, that's fair. We're getting off topic. There was just another one that said that it's circular. I've heard
no, it doesn't. Literally none of them said that. They always say that Cartesian Circle is indication of dualism that's circular.
Yeah. So we agree to disagree on that one. The argument from determinism. I wanted to go to this. So Sam Harris says, I don't know if you, because I know you are a determinist, but I don't know if you would agree with Harris's take when he says, a belief is a long-standing event in the central nervous system. Brian Greene goes on to say, laws of physics determine the future. There is no intercession by human will. You would agree with that, I think.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, he says the laws of physics determine the future. There is no intercession by human will. Because Brian Greene's a determinist also. He said this in a dialogue with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And so the idea, the argument from determinism, and I just kind of thought this up off the cuff. If determinism is true, then my belief in God is circumstantially justified. Determinism is true, therefore my belief in God is circumstantially justified. How do you feel about that, and which premise would you reject?
Circumstantially justified just means it's a product of evolution of the brain, so it doesn't mean it's true. So circumstantially justified just means it's arbitrary.
What you believe is true is essentially just the same processes that lead me to believe that it's false. The laws of physics. The laws of physics aren't searching for truth necessarily. They're not on a truth hunt.
Doesn't matter. So what?
I'm talking about the justification of my belief in God. So I'm saying my belief in God is justified on determinism because I can't think anything else, and neither could you.
Yeah, it's de facto. It doesn't matter. Like the fact that you could think anything else doesn't make a difference.
What do you mean it doesn't make a difference?
It makes no difference.
I could even go so far as saying if determinism is true, then my rejection of determinism is circumstantially justified.
Yes,
determinism
all
is
of your
true,
beliefs.
therefore my rejection of determinism is justified.
Yeah, all of your beliefs are. So what? It doesn't matter.
Okay, cool. So you believe that the belief in God is a justified belief?
No, circumstantially justified. That circumstantial justification means determined by evolution. So in that sense, everything is, and so it's irrelevant to the conversation. It's like saying every belief is a belief.
Saying.
So you're confusing. You're confusing.
No
wait. You're equivocating. Stop. You're equivocating circumstantial justification, which means caused by evolution, with epistemic justification. Those do not mean the same thing.
Give me your breakdown of epistemic justification.
That means like actually justified by the evidence, like real justification. What the word actually means, right. Justification.
Your hunt for the evidence, your willingness to accept or reject the evidence is all based on physics, according to determinism.
Yeah, but that doesn't make a difference.
Make a difference.
No.
I can't accept the evidence. I can't choose to accept or reject it. It's all the physics.
Whether you accept it doesn't matter. Something isn't justified because of your ability to accept it. No one cares if your ability to accept it is if you're able or not. It doesn't make a difference.
Really? So if no one in the world is able to freely accept or reject any evidence, then how do we know who's closer to truth?
How do we know who's closer to truth?
Correct.
By
if
testing
we're all determined,
things.
If all of our beliefs are a result of long-standing events in our central nervous system, how do we know who's closer to truth?
Success, novel testable predictions, science, that's how.
Right, but all of that stuff is still determined.
Doesn't make a difference.
We can't escape.
It doesn't make a difference. Like you're bringing up an irrelevant argument here. It does not matter.
Okay, so if we can move on from this one if we are willing to just say then, my rejection of determinism and my belief in God are both justified.
No, because you can't say they're justified. You can say they're circumstantially justified. Circumstantially justified means arbitrary. That's
justified, though.
No, it's arbitrary. It just means it's arbitrary.
How's it arbitrary? I can't escape from the circumstance. There's no way to escape.
No. So your ability to escape means it's arbitrarily determined not by the reasons. Determined by evolution or whatever. It means it's not epistemically justified. Stop. So if you're saying, hold up, don't interrupt. So if you're saying something is circumstantially justified, circumstances determine the justification, that means it's not epistemically justified. You mean you're a dumbass if you believe this kind of a thing. It means not epistemically justified.
But how? If you're not in control, isn't the word dumbass kind of arbitrary if you can't control what you believe?
It means like it's not controlled by the reasons, so.
Nothing is. It's all physics. That's what Brian Greene is saying.
Which means not justified. So your belief in God is not justified.
But it is circumstantially justified.
No, that means not. Circumstantially justified means not justified, not epistemically justified.
Right, but circumstantially justified can't mean not justified because it's a form of justification.
No, circumstantially justified means that your brain is determined to believe this, and so you aren't like irrational for doing it. It's still an irrational belief. You're just not irrational for doing it. It means you're not epistemically justified.
You said it's an irrational belief, but I'm not irrational for believing it?
Yes, because you don't have a choice. That's what it means.
That's a direct contradiction.
No,
How can it both be irrational and not irrational?
Because if you have no choice, it's like it would be irrational if you had the option, but you don't have the option, so you're not the one being irrational.
So who is?
No one.
Okay, no one. So no one's being irrational. So if I believe in God for
it's
no
not
reason,
justified.
Then no one's being irrational.
It's not justified. You are unable to be rational or irrational. So again, this is like not an argument. So again, you're just You're nitpicking on incorrect definitions that you don't understand about philosophy, but you're not presenting an argument. So no,
I'm a layman philosopher out the gate. That's why I appreciate these dialogues, right? I'm a layman philosopher. I'll freely admit that.
But it seems like you're saying that my
argument is justified.
No. These are
even
just
though it's not
semantic
justified.
arguments. Do nothing.
Before.
Semantic arguments are a waste of time, garbage. Like, no, what you're saying is just not the correct usages of the definitions. It's not worth the time to describe it. I can tell you, here's the correct answer. Evolution beliefs, even though all of our beliefs are determined, some can be justified, some cannot be justified. Some are rational, some are not rational, and it doesn't matter whether or not they're determined by the universe or not. It's dependent upon whether or not they follow the course of evidence that we have. So it's irrelevant. So none of this conversation matters. Yes, we can have justified beliefs. Yes, your belief in God is irrational. Yes, my belief in atheism is rational because it's followed by the evidence. The fact that we're determined makes no difference.
Right, but you reject certain evidence. There's evidence everywhere. There's even evidence for two contradictory ideas. Like from a scientific theory to a court of law, there is combating evidence, and we kind of go with the evidence that describes the majority of the data. So if there's two scientific theories, both of them are going to have evidence and explain kind of portions of the data. So if you accept one idea and I accept a counter idea, and we both derive because of the physics, then how do you say which one is justified, which one isn't?
Because it's not true that every theory has evidence. Like, the ability to explain the data isn't evidence. Like, if I see that there's a cup knocked over and I said that a magic leprechaun knocked over the cup, is the cup evidence of a magic leprechaun? No, that's called post hoc reasoning, where you're looking at the data and you make up an explanation for the data that's not evidence. So to have evidence, you need to make novel, testable predictions about the future. You'd say, if the cup was knocked over by a magic leprechaun, then I will find a brick of gold in the pot of gold or whatever. And if we discovered that, then they'd be like, okay, so this is evidence of a leprechaun. So just being able to explain the data isn't evidence. Anybody can do that. That's just post hoc reasoning.
So what it sounded like Brian Greene was saying is that the reason that I am a Christian and that I'm a theist sitting down having this debate with you is because the elementary particles from the Big Bang are doing this right now, are in a state of flux that is represented by
red herring,
biscuitness.
Red herring. It doesn't matter. That doesn't affect the justification or accuracy of any belief.
It definitely gives me justification because I can't do anything else.
No, it does not. It does not give you epistemic justification.
Right, but your epistemic justification is just, you can't escape. Like, let's focus on the justification that neither of us can escape and see if we can even get to the epistemic justification.
That's just de facto things. It's saying this is the way it is. That's all it's saying. That is not saying you're justified to believe this. It's not saying it's rational to believe it. It's just saying this is the way you're determined to act. This is not in any way saying your belief is not dumb. Because that seems to be...
how can it be... being dumb implies... So if you're saying, hey, Biscuit, you're being dumb, what you're implying is that I have a decision to not be dumb.
No, I would say
what would justify the critique if I can't do anything other than what I'm doing?
I'm trying to answer.
Why would you critique me for being dumb?
Let me try to answer. So if there was a person who was a free agent, had perfect rationality, and they saw the evidence you see, would they be rationally justified in believing the belief you have? No, they would be dumb to do that. Their brain would be misfiring if they did that. The fact that you don't have free will doesn't make a difference. It would still be irrational.
It's misfiring. You're saying that in order to believe something wrong or false, it's a misfiring of the brain? Where does that come from?
No. If you're a perfectly rational agent, in order to believe something false, it has to be a mistake in your brain somewhere. Yes, or your consciousness. So if there was a perfectly free, perfectly rational agent and it followed the evidence you had...
We're not free. We're talking about determinism.
I don't care, because that's not the point I'm bringing up. So if there was a perfectly rational, perfectly free agent, and it had your belief based off of this evidence, no, it would not be rational. It would be something that would be a mistake. So whether or not you personally are free doesn't matter. Like, if you're a computer or a calculator, it doesn't matter. The point here is that if there was a free, rational agent who could freely think and freely assess the evidence without being determined, if it came to this conclusion, it would be an irrational conclusion. That's what it means to say something is irrational.
So you're saying because we can conceptualize a free agent making freely a rational decision, we can assume that these non-free determined agents, regardless of the fact that they can't freely choose, are as irrational as the hypothetical free people.
No. I'm saying, like, if we can conclude things like 1 + 1 = 2, and that's an objective fact, if you conclude 1 + 1 = 7, then that's irrational, whether or not you're determined to do so. So even if, like, you have a brain tumor that makes you think 1 + 1 = 7, that's irrational. Even though you're determined to do it, you're still irrational, but it's not your fault.
It wouldn't be dumb because they can't decide otherwise, right?
Right. They can't decide otherwise. They're still, that belief, 1 + 1 = 7, is still an irrational belief, whether or not their brain personally is itself irrational. So what we care about is, what is the evidence, what is the objective evidence, and do the objective beliefs correspond to the direction the evidence is pointing? And that's an objective question. Your personal subjective beliefs don't matter to the question. Also, I found a paper on the Cartesian Circle, Justor stable /2105470. Descartes' reasoning is often said to be circular in that he deduces the existence of God from a clear and distinct perceptions, and then deduces the reliability of our clear and distinct perceptions from the existence of God. That's the Cartesian Circle. It's not about the cogito. It's about his God relation to the cogito.
Yeah, there's lots of different like onlinephilosophyclub.com, they say that it's circular. A lot of philosophers say that it's circular. But I mean,
Online Philosophy Club is not a published journal. I just gave you a published journal article, so my source wins. I have an actual source, an actual authority on the topic.
Yeah, but I think circular reasoning is pretty easy to kind of to see. And so, I mean, we can move on from that one, but I do think that it's circular. I do think it's a circular argument. Nope. It's saying, therefore I am. Nope. So it's trying to prove amness, and it starts with amness.
Nope. So again, I mean, that's just not understanding the definitions in philosophy of how circular arguments work. Like,
that's fair. I'm willing to admit that may be the case. I mean, but if it's true, then it's justified, right? Because I'm determined. So let's move on to the next argument, which is argument from being, right? So, and this one is kind of a wacky one that I'm not so sure about myself. So maybe you can just poke holes in this one. Let's say that God is amness. Let's say that God is isness. God is what it means to be. God is just being fundamentally, on a fundamental level. And I know that's crazy to think about, but God said to Moses, "I am that I am." The idea that God is amness. So, would omniscience, if you think about pure being, about everything that is, would that include all knowledge?
Wait, so what's the question?
The question is all knowledge included in being?
No.
What knowledge would be outside of being?
Well, being wouldn't have any knowledge. You can exist without having knowledge. Rocks can exist and not have knowledge quite easily.
Right. So I think you might be not understanding what I mean. I mean, if someone were to say that the universe, this idea is called Panentheism, which you've talked about before. The idea that everything that exists is in God, and that because you and I are conscious, we are the knowing part of the universe. We are the omniscience, because everything that can be known is known by a mind, and we are the minds that add knowingness to the universe.
We don't know everything. Like, none of all of the consciousnesses we know of, all of the knowledge of all of the consciousnesses amount to like 0.0000000 something % of knowledge. Like, it's literally impossible to have all knowledge. That's been proven by the paradox of omniscience, Wittgenstein's paradox of omniscience. It's Gödel's incompleteness theorem number 2.
Now, what if you were to redefine knowledge as, like, so the world? Let's say the world contains all sentient beings. We don't know that for sure, but let's just say that the world, or that this planet Earth, contains all sentient conscious minds. Okay. Let's just play that game for a second. If that were the case, it would be the case that all knowledge happens here.
Sure.
You follow me?
Yes. All things that are known here.
Right. And so wouldn't it follow then, if that were the case, that the universe is a knowing universe and we are the knowledge of it?
No, because the universe itself is an anthropomorphization. It would say that brains are knowing, the universe wouldn't be knowing.
But wouldn't we be part of the universe? What's the distinction?
Yes. composition division fallacy. The parts and the whole aren't the same thing.
Well, no, parts of, so yeah, I'm not talking about pantheism as in the or panpsychism, that the universe is conscious. I'm saying, what if we are the conscious portion of the universe?
Be the same thing, composition division fallacy. You could say a part of the universe knows some
Can you break
things.
down that fallacy for me? I'm not familiar.
Not like a property of the parts isn't necessarily a property of the whole, and a property of the whole isn't necessarily a property of the parts. So like a star can bend space-time. Hydrogen atoms, which are what make a star, can't bend space-time on their own, or significantly or whatever. Or a star can cause, the Earth can, orbit a star. The Earth cannot orbit a hydrogen atom. So this property of the star, which is a part of the whole, doesn't exist in any of the individual parts of the star, the hydrogen atoms that make it up. So, and the opposite is also true. So a thing that has a property of the parts isn't necessarily a property of the whole. So my brain is conscious, my fingertips are not conscious. So you couldn't say my fingertips are conscious. So just because one part of me has that property doesn't mean that every part of me has that property, or part of the collection has that property. No individual part has that property. So you could not say the universe is conscious. You could say a part of the universe is conscious, which is us, but you couldn't say the universe is conscious.
Right, but if you were to say that, if I were to say T-Jump is conscious, right? Yeah. I'm not talking about any part of your body besides up here, right?
Yep.
So that's the conscious part of T-Jump. It's
right.
Not your arm, it's not your leg.
Right.
So what if we were to say the same thing about the universe, that the part of the universe that's conscious is the minds that are localized here on Earth and maybe on certain planets that contain sentient life that we aren't aware of?
Yeah, you could say a part of the universe is conscious, the people, sure.
Yeah, so a part of the universe is conscious, that being people. A part of people are conscious, that being brains.
Yep.
Right. So what if we were to say that, omniscience, this idea of all knowledge, and maybe this is the big problem that I'm having. Maybe this is, because when I started this argument, I said that it was weak. So maybe you've kind of unpacked here the semantic problem that I've had, because omniscience, I'm using omniscience to mean all knowledge.
Well, by all knowledge,
taking minds.
Well, question.
To contain all knowledge, meaning all the knowledge that's available.
Well, so there's two ways to interpret that. One would be is all things that are known is all knowledge, because if all of the known facts, right. That would be all knowledge. But there's omniscience means all possible knowledge that could ever be known, all of the known facts in all things ever, not just the things that happen to be known now, but all things that could ever be known.
Right. And so I think my mistake was using that first definition and applying that to omniscience.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's that mistake. So I'll have to work on that one and come back to it. The argument from certainty, right? So one, and this one is a syllogism. If God does not exist, certainty is impossible. Certainty is not impossible, therefore God exists. How would you attack that one?
Arbitrary. So I'd say, if gods exist, or if God exists, there are dogs, therefore God exists. I mean, it's like, okay, but there's no.
Right, but I could easily, if God exists, there are dogs.
Or if there are dogs,
therefore God exists.
Yeah. So it's like,
yeah, but you'd have to. I think I would attack the first premise.
Yeah. So the same. I'm saying the same thing would apply to your argument, is that you need some way to show that the first premise is true, not just that it is valid. Show the soundness.
I think how syllogisms work is you attack a premise, right? Because I mean, I think you would see that it necessarily follows. If God does not exist, certainty is impossible. You could attack that premise if you want, or certainty is not impossible. You could attack that premise, or that God, but if you allow both the premises, then it follows necessarily that the conclusion is true.
Right. So I'm attacking the soundness, not the validity. So validity and soundness are the two things you can attack in a.
Right. So you're saying it's valid, but it's not sound.
Yes. So that's why I use the dog thing, because the dog thing is also valid, but it's not sound.
Okay, so what's wrong with the soundness here?
It's asserted but not demonstrated. So like I asserted that if there are dogs, God exists, there are dogs, but just asserting that there's a connection between dogs existing and God is arbitrary. So you can assert that without God, certainty is impossible, but that's just an assertion. Like
Okay,
that hasn't been demonstrated.
so if I say if God does not exist, certainty is impossible.
Yes.
So let's take the universe in which God does not exist. Is it true that in that universe, where an omniscient being does not exist, then what you are certain of, or what you claim to be certain of, can be contradicted by that thing which you don't know?
No.
That's not possible.
No, you can still have certainty without a God.
Give me something that you could not be wrong about.
I exist.
Okay. That's actually very, very good. You totally destroyed me on that one. That does not exist. Certainty is impossible. Bro, I got to give it to you on that one. I thought it was stronger than it was, this one, T-Jump. All right, so you got me with your jujitsu move, all right? Go ahead, sip your coffee. Raise your hands in triumph. All right. Dang, bro. I keep your stupid ergo sum circularity. No, I'm playing with you. All right, so
notice I didn't say that. I didn't say I think anymore.
No, you didn't. You didn't. No, you bro. I gotta give it to you. I'll hand it to you on that one, bro. And I feel stupid because I should have thought of that, especially knowing that I'm talking to T-Jump here. So no, you got that one. Because there's no way to assume that you don't exist. There's no way to.
Well, there's no way to assume you don't exist and be right. So you can't assume, or I can't believe I exist and be wrong. There are people who think they don't exist, which is quite a silly brain fart, but you can't believe you exist and be wrong.
I've heard people go into like, oh, well, how do you know that you're thinking? How do you know there's not just thought, but that's your experience, right? Whose experience is that?
Yeah, that's where the Cartesian...
when people say, how do you know you exist? They're like, well, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Right? If you say, how do you know you exist? What do you mean by you? Right?
That's the circular thing of the cogito, is that if you assume the nature of the I, that's where it becomes circular. Like maybe I'm a brain in a vat, maybe I'm in the matrix, maybe I'm a Borg mind, like a combination of a bunch of different consciousnesses, maybe I'm just an electric fart in Venus's atmosphere or something. Like you can't assume you know what the I is, because like if you said I am Tom Jump in Minneapolis, Minnesota on Earth, and I weigh 240 or whatever, like all of that could be wrong. Like none of those things could be right. But the direct experience of the consciousness, that can't be wrong. So if all of the I you mean is the direct experience, you can't be wrong.
Bro, so your argument, so you did a video on presup, and I think that you with this idea, and I should have watched your video on presup. But what you said about that certainty of existence, that does a lot to disprove a lot of the presuppositional arguments, because what they go on when they say, oh, because that's a presuppositional argument, right? Arguing from God down and saying we have to start with God in order to get anywhere.
Yep.
When you say, look, I have to say that I exist and I don't need God in order to say that, I just have my experience. That is probably the best argument against the presuppositional top-down way of looking at it that I've heard, and it's kind of right in front of my eyes, and I just kind of never noticed that.
Yeah, that's half of the presup argument for sure. So I think you appreciate the confidence.
I don't typically take the presup approach, but we said, look, we're going to go over a bunch of these arguments and see which ones work and which ones don't. But so I had to throw a presup one in there, and I didn't expect you to kind of get around it that quick.
Well, yeah, so I wanted to be clear, though. There's a second presup argument. Like the main presup argument that's done by Van Til and Bonson isn't that you can't have knowledge without God. It's that knowledge wouldn't be possible in the universe without God. So it's kind of like the moral argument where you'd say atheists can be moral because God exists. So if God didn't exist, morality wouldn't be possible. But because God exists, yes, the atheist can have morality because God is there to ground it or whatever. And so Van Til and Bonson say that atheists can have knowledge even though they don't accept or believe in God, in the same way that they can have morality, because God is there in the universe. So that's the professional precept argument that the universe wouldn't even exist, and knowledge wouldn't even exist if God didn't exist. And so it's not about whether or not you can have knowledge. That's more just a silly Darth Dawkins thing.
I was expecting you to go the justified true belief route, but you actually went to certainty, which is a better attack, right? Because that's what the argument is talking about. You can't have certainty. And I thought you were going to say, oh, well, knowledge is just justified true beliefs, not absolute certainty. But you're right. Like, you can be absolutely certain that you are having this experience, right?
Yep.
And so, no, that was really good. I actually learned a lot from that one.
Thanks.
So this one is an argument from perfection, more or less. I didn't look any of these up. These were just kind of things that I was thinking about. But if God does not exist, there is no is-ought distinction. There is an is-ought distinction, therefore God exists. Which one of those would you attack? Or would you say that it's valid?
Valid, but again, the first premise isn't sound. Like, even if there was a God, there'd still be an is-ought distinction. Like, God existing wouldn't solve the is-ought distinction.
Well, I think if you were to say that there's a Christian deity or the Muslim deity, then God's existence, if God were to, manifest himself in reality, or to, either express himself through revelation or through one of the holy books, you could say God's existence implies an is-ought distinction, because you ought to do the will of God, regardless of what it is you want to do. How would you attack that?
So the is-ought distinction is showing that there's no way to go from an is to an ought. So if you're saying God exists, therefore there is an is-ought distinction, that would mean that the only reason that you can't go from an is to an ought is because God exists. So it seems like
I think the difficulty would be to explain why, absent a God, you would be justified in assuming that there is an is-ought distinction. What's the justification of the is-ought distinction absent God?
That's like asking, why can't you square root a pork chop? Like, so the is-ought distinction is saying that there's two different categories of things. There are the is things and the oughts things. And there's no combination of like a mathematical or sentence-based way to go from just is statements to get to an ought statement. So it's like there's no way to combine mathematical equations that'll give you the square root of a pork chop. You just can't use math to square root an object like a pork chop. It doesn't work because they're two different domains. So the is-ought distinction is saying that there is two different domains. One is the list of is statements and one is the list of ought statements, and that no combination of is statements will ever get an ought statement. And so it's like saying that the is-ought distinction is only possible if God exists is like saying that the inability to square root a pork chop only exists if God exists. That means that if God did not exist, then it would be possible to square root a pork chop. And so
hey, T-Jump, one critique I have to make of you, sir, one critique I have of you is that oftentimes when people bring up arguments, you bring up the square root of pork chop or how the whole discussion is nonsense. And a lot of the discussions are not as much of nonsense as you assume that they are. I think some people just kind of get you in the corners and you suggest that they're talking nonsense when they're not.
I don't think so. I don't know of any examples of that happening, but I mean, did that make sense? Because like the is-ought statement is...
Well, I mean, the thing is, the is-ought distinction is something I learned about in Philosophy 101.
Yes.
A lot of people learn about it in Philosophy 101. It's the question of ethics. So you'll get a professor who says, okay, ethics is the question of the is-ought distinction is what's taught as this is what's right to do. This is right and wrong. What we're trying to discover is the differentiation between what is and what ought to be done. And some people go by the categorical imperative. Some go by the hypothetical imperative. Some people use Aristotelian virtue ethics, Kantian deontology. There's lots of different ethical and moral frameworks to show how we get from the is, what we are doing, to what we ought to be doing. It's I don't think it's invalid at all.
Well, no, I accept the problem is there. Like the problem is real.
Yeah.
But your argument said that if there is no God, there is no is-ought problem. Which means that
let me frame it like this. What right do we have? Nietzsche said, insofar as we believe in moral law, we're passing sentence on existence. This was a critique of the European atheist in his day. He's saying, if God doesn't exist, then what right do we have to assume the world should be any other way than exactly how it is? The universe didn't intend for us to do anything different. I think it goes back to the determinism argument we had before. No one can do anything other than exactly what they are doing, because we're just this fluctuating process of particles in our brains, down to our biology, down to our beliefs. So how could you say that someone ought to be doing anything different than what they are doing?
Well, that seems to be a second question, because the first question is like, imagine a universe where there is no God. Could the people in that universe still ask the question, how do we go from is statements to ought statements? Well, yes, they can obviously ask that question. It's still going to be equally as difficult to get an ought from an is, because you can't get an ought from an is. So that problem is still going to exist whether God exists or not. Just like the problem.
How could you not get an ought from an is if God instantiates it? If God creates an ought distinction and lays down rules of the universe and says you ought to appeal to this moral authority or this greatest authority, how do you assume that a all-powerful being couldn't do that?
Well, he could. So that would be like God created the laws. That's an is statement. So it is the case that God created the laws. Okay, but why ought I follow them?
Why ought you follow the laws that God created?
Yep.
Because God is a perfect being, and perfect, and I think that would imply the ought.
Well, so God is a perfect being. That's an is statement. God is a perfect being. Why ought I do what he says?
Because there is no higher ought that's available.
There is no higher ought. Okay, so there is no higher ought. So why ought I do the that ought?
I feel like the ought would be because you are the created thing. It would almost be asking, why ought my cell phone communicate my voice to you? Because it was created to do the thing.
Well, I don't think your cell phone has an ought, but like so let's say I am created.
Cell phone certainly has an ought, doesn't it? I mean, it's not a rock. It's not an arbitrary piece of equipment. It was created for a purpose, to be utilized for that purpose.
Well, oughts are things like a conscious agent should do this action as opposed to other actions. Like cell phones don't have actions they should do as opposed to actions they shouldn't do. There's nothing like
right. Yeah, not on a consciousness level. Yeah.
So that's what ought usually means. And so if you say you are a created being, that's an is statement. It is the case you are a created being. Then they could ask, okay, I'm a created being. Why ought I do something just because I'm a created being?
I'm just writing this down. Why ought I do something just because I'm a created being? You've given me a lot to think about, T-Jump. On the last two arguments, you've given me a lot to ponder here.
Well, this is
if God does not exist, there is no is-ought distinction. There is an is-ought distinction. So it seems like you got the second premise. There is an is-ought distinction. I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. I think you're saying that God does not solve the is-ought distinction problem.
Well, yeah, there's two objections.
Just because God is an is, that doesn't follow that we ought to do anything regarding God as an entity.
Yeah, so there's two objections I have to that argument. One is that the first premise is unsound. You don't need God for the is-ought dilemma. The is-ought dilemma is going to be there whether or not God is, just like dogs are going to be there whether or not God is. Even in a non-God universe, they will still be dogs. Dogs will still exist. So even in a non-God universe, the is-ought distinction will still be a real problem that exists. And then
calling it the is-ought dilemma.
Yes.
You just called it a dilemma instead of the is-ought distinction, because that kind of helps you kind of figure out what's actually going on. Does the existence of God solve the is-ought dilemma?
Yeah,
God
dilemma just
presents
means a choice between two options. So dilemma just means any choice between two options. So they're synonyms. But
so I guess what I was presupposing there is that I guess I was kind of presupposing the hypothetical imperative that if we set a goal, right? If the goal is to be good, well, maybe that helps. Maybe that'll help my argument out a little bit. Let's try this one. Because the is-ought distinction is morality, right? It's an ethical dilemma. And so if we're talking about right and wrong and good and evil in this ethical dilemma, then God, being the perfect good, would satisfy the is-ought distinction. If the ought is getting you toward a higher good, if you propose that there exists a perfect being, and the is-ought distinction is about ethics, it's about higher ethics, it's about graduating to higher morality, then you would want to do the will of God because God is a morally perfect being.
So the is-ought distinction applies to literally every worldview. Like this is actually stated like in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. The is-ought distinction applies to everything, including both spiritual and non-spiritual worldviews. It's just saying that, very much like my example earlier, like the square root of a pork chop, the reason I used that is because there's two different kinds of things. There's math, and math doesn't apply to pork chop. So you can't it's not possible to do a square root of a pork chop. They're two different kinds of things. Like it's not possible to square root a cloud or to square root a potato. They're two different kinds of things, math and then the objects. Is and oughts are the exact same thing. They're two different kinds of things. And the is-ought problem is saying that there's no combination of is statements, including God exists, God is perfectly moral, you are a created being, God is the perfect instantiation of laws or whatever. All of those are is statements. There's no possible way to get is statements that leads to an ought statement. Just like it's not possible to do any kind of mathematical equations.
I think you can if you use the hypothetical imperative, meaning to set a goal. A goal can actually get you started. So if you set the ethical goal of saying, okay, what's the goal of ethics? Let's set that ethical goal. It's to achieve goodness. It's to be as morally good as possible. If you can conceive of a morally perfect agent, then you ought, by dint of that goal you have, you ought to follow the rules of that agency, of that God. It satisfies the hypothetical imperative.
Well, the hypothetical imperative gives you a subjective goal. So you're like, I want ice cream, therefore I should go to the store and get ice cream. But someone else could say, I want vanilla and I should go to the store to get vanilla. Or something could say, I don't want to be a part of God, therefore I ought not obey God or something. So hypothetical imperatives are also...
But if the goal is, I want to be moral, I want to be more ethical.
Yeah.
I want to do good and not evil. Then the idea of there being a morally perfect agent, that morally perfect agent's laws should be followed. That turns the is into an ought.
Not exactly. So the subjective desire is where you're getting the ought from. You're saying, I ought to fulfill my desire to be moral, to do whatever. But that doesn't follow. The fact that you have a desire doesn't analytically prove that you ought to do anything. Like there are people who have desires where they ought not do something. Like maybe they have a desire to kill a baby or something. Well, they ought not kill the baby. So the fact that they have a hypothetical...
That ought from the is.
What?
How do you get that ought from the is? They ought not kill the baby. How does that arise from the is of their desire to do it?
Well, that's what I'm showing, is saying that if they have a desire to kill a baby, but there is the subjective morality that says don't kill babies, then those are two different hypothetical imperatives. The one who wants to kill the baby and the morality which says you shouldn't kill the baby. So how do you get an ought from one of those that doesn't also follow from the other?
So are you saying that the moral principles are kind of subjective? That the moral ideals that we're imagining are ultimately subjective?
With hypothetical imperatives. So yes, in hypothetical imperatives, it's all subjective. Categorical imperatives are the ones where they're objective.
Right. Categorical imperative that's a different moral philosophy.
It's the same philosophy. They're Kant's. They're both Kant's. Hypothetical and categorical imperatives were introduced by Kant in the exact same.
The categorical imperative was Kant's critique of David Hume in his hypothetical imperative.
They're both introduced as complementary things. One is to describe subjective goals, hypothetical imperative. So it's hypothetical in that you come up with a goal yourself. That's why it's hypothetical. And categorical means it's like an objective thing that actually exists independent of your perception.
The categorical imperative, in my understanding, is that you universalize the rule. It's almost like do as thou will be done by. It violates the categorical imperative if you would do it, and it therefore makes if you can think of universalizing whatever action you take, if that action, when universalized, makes the world unlivable, then it violates the categorical imperative.
Well, that's Kant's example. He's saying what we should think is the categorical imperative is if we make any law universalized. But that's just an example. Any kind of principle could be a categorical imperative. That was just Kant's preferred principle.
Sure, yeah. So if we say, if we use the hypothetical imperative to make the goal of being better people, of being more morally upstanding, because better, it gets us into the weeds. But if we want to do moral goods and not moral evils, then I think you're saying another problem that we run into is that our determination of what is good and what is evil becomes subjective then, and that becomes the next problem.
Sort of. So the is-ought distinction isn't just saying how can you subjectively want an ought. Like, hypothetical imperatives just say, I want something, and in order to get that something, here is a set of actions I have to do. But it doesn't actually provide any analytic ought anywhere in that argument. It's just a subjective, this is what I want to do. So
right, it doesn't... but it can't, like, you can make something objective when you use the hypothetical imperative. I think that's the only power of the hypothetical imperative. The only reason it shouldn't totally be tossed to the side of just goal setting is because you do have access to the objective when you do it. So if you say, if you use the hypothetical imperative to say human well-being is my goal, right? It becomes your oughts become objective at that point, because there's a science to human well-being and human flourishing. Humans flourish under certain conditions, and they, die and starve under other conditions. So you can use the hypothetical imperative to say, I'm setting this goal of human well-being, and I know how to objectively accomplish it because of, say, science and history.
Well, that's how to accomplish the ought, but that isn't the ought itself. So there's a difference between the method that you would need to do, which is what you're supposed to do, but it's not the ought itself. So the ought itself is some kind of a way to show that you are obligated to do this set of actions. It's not the actions themselves. So say you want to better human flourishing, and to better human flourishing, you have to solve world hunger or whatever. Solving world hunger isn't the ought. Solving world hunger is what you ought to do. So the ought itself is the obligation that you must do these actions. The actions themselves are different from the ought. Does that make sense?
I think, in a way, yes and no, because when you say that you ought to do something, you're accomplishing the ought by doing the action. Yes?
Yes.
So I guess that's what I'm saying. It's like, if you say there are rights and there are wrongs, and you ought to do right if you want to be a moral person, just because that's the definition of morality, right? Doing what's right instead of wrong. So if you set that goal and you believe in a being that is morally perfect, you ought to do the will of that being in your goal to be morally right. Or morally good.
So again,
I guess the only struggle at that point would be to instantiate the existence of such a being,
no.
which would be a different conversation. But what else would be
so the problem here is the oughts as separate things from the actions that you ought to do. So it's like a light switch. A light switch turns on the electricity and then lights up the bulb, but the light switch is different from the bulb. They're two separate things. So oughts are like the light switch. It's the thing telling you the direction you should go in. And the light bulb is like the actions, the things like curing world hunger. the curing world hunger isn't itself an ought. It's not, it doesn't have an ought anywhere in it. Oughts are some separate thing to curing world hunger that tell you that you want to do this, or that you are obligated to do this thing. So the oughts are the kinds of things that tell you what you are obligated to do. And then there are a list of those things that it tells you. But the list of the things you ought to do don't themselves tell you anywhere that you ought to do them. Like just saying.
So you're saying like if the light bulb in our situation is curing world hunger, and turning on the light switch, if turning on the light switch accomplishes curing world hunger, which is the light bulb flashing, then why have you not accomplished the ought?
Well, the goal is, how do you go from light bulb? How do you construct a light bulb in such a way that it also builds the light switch? So we're trying to say, how do you go from is statements, the light bulb statements, to also get a switch that says go in this direction? So the problem is there's no way to make a list of actions like people are starving or people are suffering or whatever, or there is a God, that gets you a set of things that you should or are obligated to do this set of actions, but not this set of actions. So I mean, the problem with the is-ought distinction.
But here's the thing. I would say, I would go to the the temple at Delphi, the idea that knowing yourself, know thyself, right? And I think it was shortened from know thyself and you'll know the universe and God. Now, no one knows if Socrates actually said that, but know thyself is definitely on the temple of Delphi. And that idea of knowing yourself, knowing the object of creation, so to speak. And with this, I'll go back to the phone analogy. Can we know anything about the creator of cell phones or the inventor of cell phones by looking at the cell phone? Can we know anything about the maker of shoes by looking at shoes?
Sort of.
And I think that becomes the struggle. Can we know anything about God, if God exists, if a creator of mankind exists? Can we know anything about that God from looking at ourselves and how human beings tend to be and tend to function in societies, the things we tend to desire, the evils that we tend to recoil at, and the goods that we tend to strive for?
Well, again, I think there's two parts to this. One is that your main argument seems to be, can God ground objective morality? Which is a valid question to ask, but I think you're using the is-ought dilemma to ask that question, and you're using it not in the right way. So like the is-ought dilemma is just trying to ask, how do you get oughts that are actually existing sentences? Like they're real things, not just subjective desires. How do you make oughts an actually existing object? And the thing is, I think that's really easy to do. Like, I think using the hypothetical imperative, at least, that becomes an easy thing to do. Because if you set a goal and we realize how to accomplish the goal, like if we use the hypothetical imperative and say, we're going to make macaroni and cheese, that's the goal, to make macaroni and cheese, then we have an objective set of oughts in order to accomplish that. Boiling water, macaroni noodles, cheese, that becomes objective as soon as we set that, that hypothetical goal. Not quite. So hypothetical imperatives don't solve the is-ought distinction. They just say, we humans are going to define oughts as what we desire. That doesn't mean that oughts are actually...
Not to interrupt, but with that macaroni and cheese example, isn't there an ought? Isn't there a set of oughts? If you set that goal, isn't there a set of oughts for how that's accomplished, and a set of ought nots? Like you don't whip out the peanut butter and jelly and the bread, in your journey to make macaroni and cheese. There is an objective set of oughts about how to make macaroni and cheese.
Well, no, because that's a subjective set. You're subjectively saying that I want this set of physical things to occur. And then you're saying, in order to instantiate this physical set of things, I'm going to say that I define ought as whatever set of steps gets me to this physical set of things. But that's a subjective thing. It's purely subjective. You are subjectively defining oughts to be the set of actions that leads to your desired outcome. But that doesn't exist independent of your subjective opinion. You just have a subjective opinion that I think I'm going to define ought to be any set of actions that leads to this outcome. So that isn't showing that oughts exist. It's just you defining oughts to be whatever set of actions leads to your desired outcome.
Right, but those are seeing eyeglasses you're wearing right now, right? They're you would see worse without them if they were off, yeah?
Yes.
So if that were the case, if your goal was to see better, you ought to put your glasses on. It can be as simple as that or as complex as something else.
That's
How
the
does
same
that
thing.
not follow?
Because you're still subjectively saying, I'm going to arbitrarily define oughts to be this set of actions that leads to my desired outcome.
No. The reason it's not subjective is because it doesn't depend on anyone's opinion. Like, so whether you can see better with your glasses on is not subjective. No one's opinion can devalue the truth of that. It's objective that you can see better with them on.
Well, you're confusing the objectivity of the consequences with the objectivity of the ought. Those are two separate things. So the consequences, like if I put my glasses on, I will see better. That's objective. It's a fact that if I put my glasses on, I will see better. That's an is statement. That's not an ought statement. That's an is statement. The ought statement is the part where I should put my glasses on. That part isn't objective. That part's subjective to my hypothetical desires, my hypothetical imperative. I desire to see better, so I think I should put my glasses on. But anyone could disagree with that. Anyone could say, oh no, you shouldn't put your glasses on. Or I define oughts to be potato or something. You can just change the definition of ought. Anybody can just change the definition of ought in any way they want. How do you show there is an objective oughtness, not just I made up the definition to mean what I want?
Right, but you can make up a goal. I mean, just because, your goal is subjective, right? But making a subjective goal, you can actually create an objective ought from a subjective goal. We do it all the time. You disagree?
No, you can't create an objective ought. You can create a subjective ought, not an objective ought.
Right, but what's the subjective ought about? Like, so if you take your glasses off and you wonder how you can see better, I say, put your glasses on and you'll see better. And someone else says, eat a peanut butter jelly sandwich. That'll help you see better. And someone said, comb your hair. That'll help you see better. These are not subjective things. The truth of what will cause you to see better, there's not a subjective ought. The ought is objective. Put on your glasses.
No.
Now I understand the goal. The goal can be subjective. Because the goal is mind dependent, but the ought is not mind dependent. It's mind independent. Because your glasses are the only thing that's going to help. That's the only ought.
You can change the definition of ought. So say ought is that which will help you achieve your goal. That's your definition. I can say, nope, ought is that which will not help you achieve your goal. So if ought is that which will not help you achieve your goal, then you should eat a peanut butter sandwich because it's not going to help you see better. That is what you ought to do. So you can change the definition of ought itself in any way you want.
Right, but if you say ought is what will not help you achieve your goal, and your goal is to put your glasses on, or your goal is to see better, then yeah, you should eat the sandwich because you've set the goal of not achieving the goal.
Yeah, that's the point. So the definition of ought,
the
definition of ought is subjective. I define it to be what helps me achieve my goal. He defines it as anything that doesn't help me to achieve my goal. He defines it as potato. When we say, how do you get an ought from an is, we want to know how do you get an objective existing thing that isn't just my desires, where I just give a definition to it. You can't just arbitrarily define ought to be whatever. If you just give an arbitrary definition of ought, like I define ought to be whatever helps me achieve my goals, that's not getting an ought from an is. That's just making up a definition of ought. We don't want you to make up a definition of ought. We want to know how do you get a deductive analytic proof that this is what you ought to do. So in all of the examples you listed, all that you're doing is saying, I'm going to subjectively define ought to be this, which then leads to these consequences. But that's not what we're asking. We want to know, how do we get the definition of ought, but not subjectively? How do you get a definition of ought that isn't just something you made up?
So yeah, I'm gonna have to agree to disagree with you on that one too. And so I think I wanted to move on to this last one, which is essentially like an argument from physical fundamentals, right? So Leonard Susskind said emergence is now mainstream physics. Sean Carroll said something really surprising. He said space-time is not a fundamental entity. The very fabric of space and time is composed of spaceless, timeless entities. And so by entity, he didn't mean a conscious entity, obviously. Carroll's an atheist. But he said that in Fabric of the Cosmos segment of Big Think. So, and so with quantum entanglement, and I'm sure that everyone in your audience is going to be familiar with this, where they can take two similarly charged subatomic particles, separate them vast distances, and what happens to this one immediately happens to this one, right? Regardless of how many light years you separate them, the math implies that you can even separate them from one side of the universe to another side of the universe. Yeah. And what that showed to people like Susskind and Carroll is that space is a three-dimensional projection of two-dimensional information in the quantum realm.
Those are two separate theories.
What are two separate? I'm talking about the holographic principle.
Yeah. So the first thing you mentioned, that space-time is emergent, that is completely separate from entanglement. Those are two separate theories.
But I think that the idea that space and time are projections was a lot of what helped that advance was the quantum entanglement, because it showed that distance isn't fundamental. There should be a gap of time between the charging this particle and the charging of this particle if the information had to pass between the vast distances, right? And so I think that's kind of one of the things, and there's several things that led physicists to believe that space and time weren't fundamental.
Well, yeah, what mostly led physicists to think space-time wasn't fundamental was the fact that you can solve the equations in general and special relativity while removing the time variable, like the lambda equation. So why they think that space-time is emergent is because you can solve the equations without time, and so time isn't the variable needed to actually solve the equations. But the holographic principle states that all the information in a 3D space can be represented on a sphere, on the surface of a sphere encompassing the 3D space. That's all it says. It doesn't say anything about information being physical or not.
No. I didn't say anything about physicality. I'm talking about reality, or what's fundamental, being composed of what is essentially spaceless and timeless.
Right. So the holographic principle doesn't say anything about the constitution of reality. The holographic principle, all it says is that any amount of information within a 3D spherical space can be represented
described by two-dimensional information.
By two-dimensional information that's on the surface of the sphere.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, you and I are in agreement so far. My question is, would it lead you to, would you say that, because I mean, I'm sure that you've heard, William Lane Craig debates where he says, this is proof of a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, enormously powerful, you know what I'm saying? If we're conceding the idea that what is fundamental is spaceless, timeless, and timeless, does this give a little more credibility to the God idea than before? And why would you say no?
Because what's spaceless and timeless doesn't need to be a God. So yes, I agree that space and time are emergent properties in physics. That's the consensus in physics. Nobody thinks it's a God, though. Like, it doesn't make any sense to say it's a God. Like, that's something that just was made up by apologists. So it wouldn't lend any credence to the God hypothesis.
Well, it wasn't made up by apologists after quantum entanglement or the holographic principle was discovered.
Sure. It was made up by, like, Anselm or something.
Yeah. A very long time ago. So wouldn't this give a little bit more credence to the God idea than existed before, at least?
Like if it was a prediction that like apologists made that God exists, therefore we will discover that space and time is emergent, then it could be, but I don't think that was ever a prediction. That was just ad hoc reasoning. Like, I don't think they ever made that prediction.
Well, they said that God is spaceless and timeless and immaterial. All that goes back to Anselm.
Well, the immaterial thing...
He's just a contemporary champion of it.
Right, the immaterial thing they got wrong. So it's just space and time, not the immaterial. And secondly is that it's like... space and time is one field. It's our specific field. It's not all spaces and times. It's just our space and time. So there's other spaces and times that could exist. Like string theory has, I forget how many dimensions, 13, 11 something dimensions. Space-time is one dimension. This is just a field, nothing more. And so that one field being produced by other fields isn't particularly surprising. And all of the theories say that it is. It's a result of these other fields in string theories. So not God. It's literally caused by these other fields. If apologists made the prediction that space and time would be discovered to be emergent in the future, then yes, that could be counted as some very small evidence. But they didn't do that. They just kind of post hoc tried to explain that given the things already being discovered in physics.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I don't think that I know enough about this particular argument to go any further on it. This is not my argument. This is something that's, that's starting, in its infancy to be proposed by, some apologetic thinkers that are far beyond my pay grade. So I had one more question for you. And this is just an honest question. What would qualify as evidence of God's existence to you?
Novel testable predictions. Any novel testable predictions.
Give me an example of something that in a possible world, something that did happen.
Oh yeah, it's just literally anything. So I could say the best example, like the most realistic example would be like if we discovered the Bible 6,000 or discovered another like Dead Sea Scrolls or something of a really old Bible, and the Bible said, I, the God, created the world 13.8 billion years ago. Oh, and DNA has a double helix. Oh, and the extinction happened at this time scale. Oh, and the Yellowstone National Park will erupt at this date, and it happens. So anything that can accurately predict the future consistently. So the example I normally use is if I prayed to God for a gold brick and a gold brick appeared, and then I prayed to God and a gold brick appeared, that would be good evidence because it's a novel prediction.
I feel like the problem with that is that I can accurately predict the future consistently. I think all human beings do that. What? Like I'm probably going to go upstairs and have a sandwich in 20 minutes.
Has to predict something unknown. So like predicting things we already know or already expect doesn't count. Novel predictions means like scientifically accurate predictions about things we don't already know. So predicting the sun will rise tomorrow is not predicting the future. It's got to be something we don't know yet.
Okay, so if someone came to you and predicted the future, you would believe that God exists?
No, if they said, I have a hypothesis and this hypothesis allows me to predict X, Y, and Z, and we confirm X, Y, and Z, then that would be evidence of whatever hypothesis they're proposing. So if they say, I believe God exists and God is telling me that here are the lottery numbers and I win the lottery, like, yes, that would be evidence, a small amount of evidence for God. And if you could do that consistently and repeatedly.
But would you believe in God? If someone says, look, I know what the lottery numbers are, I'm going to give them to you and you will be a millionaire if you play them. And let's say you played them and you became a millionaire, you won the lottery. Would you believe that God exists?
No, that would be one piece of evidence. It would need to happen repeatably and testably. And if it happened repeatably and testably, then yes, I would believe in him.
So it would have to be natural then, because repeatable and testable means, that's something that happens in the sciences.
No, so it doesn't, like the effects have to be natural, but the cause doesn't have to be natural. So like I can say, I believe in a non-physical spirit named Bob, and every time I pray to the non-physical spirit Bob, he will give me a gold brick, and a gold brick appears in front of me. Like the gold brick is natural, but the non-physical spirit Bob isn't, and this would be evidence of the non-physical spirit Bob. So the consequences.
So if I was standing in your same room right now, yeah, and I said, whenever I pray to the non-physical spirit Bob, a gold brick will appear in my hand. And I prayed to the non-physical spirit Bob, and a gold brick appeared in my hand. Would you believe in God?
I would believe in Bob. Like if you said
God.
God.
Bob, I'm sorry. Would you believe in Bob? Don't give credit to God that belongs to Bob.
Yeah.
Would you believe in Bob?
Yes, that would be very evidence. I'd probably need more to like actually convince me because it would take longer to convince me, but that would definitely be evidence. I would count that as what?
What if I said bring a bunch of scientists here, and a bunch of scientists came and I said, look, Bob is real. I'm going to pray to Bob and I'm going to get bricks for everybody, gold bricks for all of you. And I did this and gold bricks appeared in front of everyone.
Yeah, I would be.
You're saying at that point,
I would probably believe in Bob. Like, holy shit, we all have gold bricks now. This is impressive. Something is going on here. He knows more than what we do. We got to figure out what this is. I would definitely
Now, what if when you believed in Bob, I accused you of Bob of the gaps? Because just because you don't know how it happened, why are you blaming Bob for this?
Because you made novel predictions. So whichever theory makes novel predictions first is the one that's supported. It's not a God of the gaps.
No, it's Bob of the gaps.
Well, yeah,
Like
it's not
the
a
reason
gaps
it's Bob
argument.
of the gaps is because the scientists would be like, okay, well, let's see how this is happening. Let's work
Yep.
on this and let's see how you're doing this. Why would you come immediately to the conclusion that this is Bob?
Because a God of the gaps argument is saying, here is something we can't explain. I'm going to label it as God or Bob or
Right,
whatever.
but the gold brick is something you can't explain,
No,
and you're labeling it as Bob.
It's something you can explain. So future predictions are something you can explain. So you're saying, because of Bob, here is something that's going to happen in the future. That's not something you can't explain, because you're literally explaining it. A God of the gaps is looking at the past and saying, here's something we don't know. And because we don't know it, I'm going to label it as this. Like, oh, look, a UFO. It must be aliens. That would be a UFO of the gap, or aliens of the gap.
Right, but I don't know if you've ever heard of this part of history, but um, Christopher Columbus, when he came over, he would terrify the Taínos by saying that judgment was going to be visited down upon them because like the sun was going to turn dark and the sun was going to, and they understood lunar and solar eclipses, right? And they understand that was predictable. And these people groups who he was frightening with these predictions assumed that he really had supernatural powers, right?
Yep.
And because he made novel testable predictions.
Yep.
Now, weren't they wrong to believe in the existence of quote unquote Bob just because of that novel testable prediction?
They were justified. So that's rational justification. Like they would be rational to believe him at that point.
T-Jump, I admire your consistency, sir.
Thank you.
I got to get out of here. This has been legit, bro. I hope that we can, because there's a lot more God arguments. I want to kind of give a breakdown real quick. The argument from determinism, I still think I'm justified. I had to agree to disagree with you on that particular one. The argument from being, I think you quickly shut down and tossed out the window because it wasn't formulated as strongly as I assumed that it was. The argument from certainty, I think you made an amazing assertion that, look, I can be certain that I exist because I can't doubt my own existence and neither can you. And so therefore, you don't need God to exist in order for certainty to be possible. I think that was an amazing way to shut down, the main presuppositional argument that I'm familiar with. I think that the argument from perfection, I'm going to have to agree to disagree with you on that one just because of our disagreement of the power of the hypothetical imperative on that one. And then the argument from physical fundamentals, I think you did a really good job of putting that one away just because I'm super layman when it comes to that one. I don't understand physics well enough. I'm still kind of getting my beak wet as far as that one is concerned. And but bro, as usual, it has been an enlightening discussion, and I hope that we can get another one going again, maybe this week, maybe next week.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks again for coming on. Do you want to plug your YouTube or any social media you want to let the audience know about?
I want to plug Random Idiot Clothing. People have been asking about these hoodies, bro. Like the last time I went on your channel, people were in my clubhouse like, bro, what was that hoodie? Random Idiot. And this is I think this is the Frankenstein hoodie. Technology can't exceed humanity, but it's Random Idiot. Look up Random Idiot Clothing. They send me free stuff. So shout out to the
send you free stuff. How do I
this debate?
How do I get free stuff?
Bro, I can send you some Random Idiot stuff if you want. If you write hoodies, it's really comfortable. And they're just trying to get their product out. If you want to rock it, wear it during one of your, because you get some traffic on your channel. I really appreciate being on here.
Yeah, I got 230.
Definitely have more conversation in the future. I love this stuff.
Yeah, I love hoodies. I got 6 hoodies. If you check all of my past videos, I'm literally wearing a hoodie in every single one of them. It's usually a gray one.
Bro, I wear hoodies in the summer. I wear hoodies when it's way too hot for hoodies.
Yep.
So for sure, man. We'll get you some gear, get you set up. As long as you shout them out. It's yo, Random Idiot. I definitely support the brand, support what they're about. So
for sure, sounds good. Will do. Let's set something up. All right,
shout out, man. I appreciate your time, bro.
Absolutely. I'll see you later.
All right, man. Next time.
Yeah. All right, peoples. Let's go to the after show in the Discords. The Discords. Discords after show time. Let's go. Everybody join the Discords. https://discord.io/t. What the fuck is that? Tjump. This is a biblically accurate Ingalls. Ingalls. I get it. I get it. Ingalls. I get it. That's funny. After show. There's a few people chatting. Not many though. What is up, Frank? I am muted on Discord. Hey, what is up, Frank and Giz? You are extremely quiet right now. Maybe is that my end? Might be.
Wait, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear you a lot better now.
Okay. I was just far away from my mic.
Gotcha. Have you checked my TikTok? I think I asked some people if they check my TikTok to see if everyone can hear everything okay. Like the other speakers.
I got you. Let me check.
I think it's like TikTok /@TjumpsChair/live.
All right.
So when I'm here and you here.
That is not me. It was not my voice. Kind of like a Jen voice.
I was just far away from my mic.
Gotcha. Have you checked my TikTok? I think I asked some people. Can you hear other people's? Like, can you hear your own voice in the TikTok, Frank?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool.
Can you hear it?
I heard the first part, not the second part.
Okay.
Well, T-Jump, what's that cat server at the bottom?
Oh, that's Beluga Gang.
Nice.
That one's the biggest one I'm a part of. That one has like I forget how many hundreds of thousands of people in it. That one's huge.
Yeah, it's full. I tried joining it, but it's full.
Yeah, I mean, that guy has a YouTube channel with 5 million followers or something.
I think he's up at like 7 million now.
Yeah, he's huge.
Hey, T-Jump, why does it look like that on TikTok, where it's like sideways almost?
Because I have my phone sideways.
Oh, okay.
So like
Gotcha.
TikTok doesn't let me stream from my stream key. So I just literally have my phone. Like I can put my finger, that's just my phone pointed at my TV screen. All right. Anybody want to join the chat, join the after show, come talk about stuff.
How was DebateCon?
DebateCon was great. It's the greatest. James had the greatest words.
Yeah, I was talking to James a couple days beforehand. It seemed like he was pretty crazy and stressed out.
Yes, James is always like that when he's trying to actually run tech stuff.
Yeah, I can see that. I made some intros and stuff for him in the past.
Oh yeah, nice. Would you
Yeah,
make some intros for me
the
and stuff? Because I don't do those. I'm lazy.
I can. Well, I try to stay in between with my other channel.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you know, don't pick sides kind of deal. That's why I picked James for some of his stuff.
Gotcha.
I could probably put you in. I did the Destiny versus the other guy intro and did the Dilla Honey versus Dr. something intro. And I just
Nice.
made him a couple backgrounds.
Nice.
So that was fun. That was a good time.
Yep. Very good.
Nice.
Second
Yeah, it was
best
good.
Bob. Appreciate the super chat. Yes, they are working. Yes, I did see that. I was just transitioning, so I didn't have time to say it because I'm not logged in on my chat thingy. But thank you, second best Bob. I appreciate it. Sean Hunt, can you answer my question? What would you do if you knew how everything worked? What would I do if I knew how everything worked? I would create the best of all possible worlds. I would build a world. I mean, maybe I don't know if I knew, even if I knew how everything worked, that wouldn't necessarily mean I could build the best of all possible worlds. So I'd probably just try to get as close as possible. I try to make the correct pre-moves that will inspire everyone in order to lead to the best of all possible worlds in the fastest way possible. That's what I would do if I knew how everything worked, most likely.
Hey, T-Jump,
Yeah, you're really quiet.
can you hear me?
Very, very quiet.
How about now?
A little better.
I want to ask, would you ever debate Darth Dawkins again?
Sure. Yes, he's like my most viewed debate. So of course, money.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I would like to see that. The last 2 times you debated him was really fun. I
Yep.
enjoyed that.
Just gotta set it up. Just get him to like come on my channel, Discord or something sometime.
Okay. I don't really know him, but I could try.
Definitely do it. Go for it.
Sure, okay.
T-Jump, I'll make you some intros if you pimp my NFT that I just made.
Sure. Like just do. Actually, I think that what works best is because I don't use intros. I'm way too lazy to actually do the work to put an intro before a video. But what could do work is like make an intro that I can post on my videos like I did my other ones, and I'll just link to your NFT or your site or whatever you want to promote in the description.
Hell yeah. Tell me what you need. Here, I'll send you a message.
I need
Like what
compilation
like what are
videos.
you
That's what I
looking-
need most. Make compilation videos of funny or best T-Jump arguments or whatever. That would be the best.
Oh, so okay. So not really like intro, but
No, intros work too. So like I have 3 or 4 different intro videos on my videos list somewhere. Like there's one I'm using for my YouTube subscribers and one I'm using for my YouTube non-subscribers. Just those are fine too. Just anything that looks cool is fine.
I mean I can make it look cool, but I don't know what kind of vision or if you have any idea of which, you know, like do you want your logo something like that, or
You can do essentially whatever you want, and I'll just put it up like I did my other ones. It's just I'm okay with pretty much anything as long as it's not violating any terms of service or whatever.
all right, I'll make you something cool.
Nice, thanks, appreciate it.
Hey Tom.
Hey,
Hey man. Yeah, hope you're doing well, man. Yeah, just a question about like the distinctions between materialism, physicalism, and naturalism. Are there distinctions that can be made between those three?
yes. Physical and material mean about the same thing, but naturalism doesn't necessarily mean either of those. So naturalism can be broader, but in general, you can use them to all mean just all that is there is unguided physical forces. That's essentially what they mean. Those are unguided physical forces, no non-physical consciousnesses.
So what you mean they can be used interchangeably?
In that context, if they are used to mean unguided physical forces, they can all mean that, but they also all have their own specific meanings that are slightly different.
And is there
Materialism and
one-
physicalism are the same. Those are about the same, but naturalism
Materialism.
can be more than that.
Right. So you would say naturalism is the more broader term?
Yes.
Right, I got you.
Have I ever done LSD? No.
If no one's asking a question, I'll ask you another one if you don't mind.
Sure.
Tom?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, so I think I might have lost you. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Go for it.
Yeah, I don't know if my connection's dropping out, but with your model of morality, how does your model establish when an actual imposition has occurred or not? Can you do that objectively in your model?
Well, how does it establish if because it's an ontological fact. If someone desires something and their desire has been thwarted, it has occurred, whether or not you know it's occurred. I don't know what you mean exactly. Like, how do we know if one has happened, or Is there like a way in reality for it to know when it's happened?
I guess what I mean is like you say the evidence of morality is sort of realized through our intuitions.
Yeah.
But you also say that some things that maybe our intuitions tell us something is immoral is not actually immoral. So I think you say that like speech or words are not immoral in positions, but like our intuitions when like someone lies to someone or when someone deceives someone or someone is verbally abusive to someone, our intuitions, I think, still experience like that morality that you talk about. And like where you say like it's not immoral, I feel like our intuitions are telling us that when someone is wronged verbally in some way, whether they're lied to, deceived, or verbally abused, like we do our intuitions are telling us something there, that something's gone wrong there. Do you not agree?
Yeah, so I think that many of our intuitions are subjectively contingent on our current situation, and in the future they will change. And I think that the objective moral thing is determined by what people will see as moral in a world where they're technologically perfect and have access to everything they need. So I think that our current intuitions, some of them are going to be wrong. Jaunty, have I ever visited the scientific wonder that is the Creation Museum? No, I have not, but I've been thinking about going and making like a video or something. Just need to make sure they allow for recording.
Bring a friend to do your recording, and if you have like recording, just kind of try and get your own. But if they recognize you as a streamer and stuff like that, they'll ask you to leave. Whereas your friend, not so much.
Yeah, I think you got to do the little thing where you like hide a little camera in the bag, so it's like it's recording, you just don't know it.
Does everybody here know how a solipsist breaks up with his girlfriend? They say it's me, not you.
Guests are welcome to photograph and record all museum exhibits except for theater and video presentations.
My bad.
Hey, how's it going? I am 33, Mr. Boss, and I weigh 240 Mannerite. That's how fat I am. I'm 240 pounds right now. I'm fat.
Yeah, Tom, I'm at 270 and I'm 5'9", so.
Being fat is the way to go. I feel like getting in shape is only required if you like need it for something. But then once you have what you need, it's like there's no point. You just lose all motivation.
Do your girlfriends or your whatever the girls you're dating, do they care about the weight or
Nope.
are they?
They
No,
do
not
not.
really.
They don't.
Oh, that's what's up, man.
Yep. A funny woman joke. My wife said I should be more feminine, so I crashed my car. I like the dark humor stuff. Mango Tea, how did you learn critical thinking? Experimentation? Problem solving? I don't know. Thank you, Mr. Boss. Appreciate it. Have you ever debated Canadian Catholic? Yes, I have debated Canadian Catholic on 3 or 4 occasions. Bunch of them listed in my debate somewhere, all with like CC or Canadian Catholic or something. What books do you read? What I read right now, I don't really read anything right now. I used to read sci-fi stuff like Harry Potter, Star Wars. But recently I started only reading books that are related to work. Like the books that professors and stuff sent me that they wanted me to read before I invited them on. Those are the things I would read mostly now.
Tom, have you ever heard of Anthony Jeselnik?
Nope.
He's probably the crudest comedian I've ever heard. He's funny. He's hilarious.
I like Jimmy Carr. Jimmy Carr, that's the one.
Jimmy Carr's
Very
funny.
similar. They're very similar, like the one-liners and dirty jokes.
Dark humor is the best.
Anthony Jeselnik, I think you'd really enjoy him.
Have you read the Bible? Yes, I've read all of the Bible cover to cover multiple times.
Hey, T-Jump, can I ask you a question after this one?
Yes.
Do you know how creativity works?
Like in the brain? Not exactly, no.
Okay.
But the general consensus is in the brain, the way our brain works is it makes connections, like neuroplasticity shapes the patterns in your brain in such a way that it develops connections between certain things more the more you use them. And kids, because their brain is developing, they have a much broader level of connections than parents, because as parents or adults, the connections, the weaker ones start to deteriorate and the stronger ones start to grow stronger. And creativity is having that broad spectrum that isn't as determined by the level of neuroplasticity that's honed in on a very specific set of connections. And so you are able to have a much broader connection of ideas than what is typical. That's usually something like that. Mango Tea would like to be added to the Discord. Like there's a description, links to the Discord are in the description, Mango. There's one in the bottom right hand side of the screen, right below the PayPal link. Call-in link it's called the call-in link. The Discord link and the call-in link are the same thing. Jen says she prefers the term brain clean. I think that's when you inject the Donald Trump disinfectant into your brain directly. The brain clean.
And T-Jump, what's your goal next 5 to 10 years? Like, what do you seek?
I'd like to start the atheist church. I'd like to buy an apartment building, decrease the cost of living as much as possible, and I'd like to buy a church building where we can host live events and do Sunday meetings and do those kinds of things. Those would be probably my next goals for the next 5 to 10 years.
And do you hold that morality is objective? And is it still the one?
Yes.
Where you say that in positions of will?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So that way it's a religion, since you could do the objective morality part.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, because the big thing with atheism is that the religious will say, oh, okay, well, how do I know, you're morally consistent, right? And then with the impositions of free will, you could then back that up with that.
Well, impositions of will, I wouldn't say free will, but yeah.
Gotcha.
Jamie Ward, I've been following you since below 2K subs. Always loved how you can make complex ideas easy to grasp with your analogies. Would you consider doing short educational videos for kids and teens? I mean, yeah, Jamie, if someone else would do all of the production work and editing work and just have me like record stuff, I would be happy to do those. I just don't want to have to do all of the editing crap. Human girl.
And
Do you deny the writings of other civilizations of Jesus Christ's life? No other civilizations wrote of Jesus Christ. It was all the Roman Empire and people around the Roman Empire. Like there are people who are non-Christians who wrote about him, but not other civilizations. But I think Jesus did exist as a human being, just not magic. Doc Palermonot. Can we wear secret temple garments with iconography patches on your new church? Yes, we will definitely have secret underwear. We need the secret underwear, and our secret underwear is going to be better than the Mormon secret underwear. That's going to be like the main theme of the atheist church, is we're going to do all the stuff the other churches do, but better. We're going to have like good, like wafers are going to be like Oreos. We're going to have Oreos with milk instead of the crappy little wafers they have. We're going to have magic underwear that's like edible lingerie. That's going to be our magic underwear. I don't know, what other stuff do churches do that is super lame? We're going to do helping the poor better than the churches do by actually decreasing the cost of living for people. That'll be a good one. Have actual
whiskey instead of wine.
Whiskey instead of wine. Well, I don't know. I don't like alcohol, so that's why like milk and Oreos are better.
Yeah.
Mango, holy shit. The Discord link is literally at the very bottom right of the screen in big, bold silver letters. It's also in every single part of the description. Cheez-Its. Yes, like Cheez-Its. Just make them Cheez-Its. We also give you part of Jesus, but our part is actually tasty.
hey, T-Jump and impositions of will, is that something you discovered, put together, or is there a philosopher that kind of like started that?
Nope, that is all me. Involuntary impositions of will is totally all me, something I made up.
Gotcha.
Can we have wafers in the shape of a clam couch? That could work. Like sugar cookies. Mango says he might be banned. Somebody might have banned Mango. That's funny. Have I ever read Hegel? There is literally no human who has ever read Hegel. They read the parts of Hegel that he didn't forget to write. So like every sentence of Hegel is missing like 30 words. That's why they're not coherent sentences. Is free will a thing? No, there's no free will, Sky. Mango, if you want, you can subscribe to my Patreon for $5, and then you can become a mod on the Discord, and you won't be banned anymore.
Have you ever thought about doing like a James Randi tour with some other guys going around debunking the lunacy that's happening around the country now?
What do you mean?
One, obviously, certain religious claims, but also, the QAnoners and all of those other types of like interesting, weird, strange other worlds that people seem to tend to live in now.
I mean, I think making a documentary like that would be really cool, but we need somebody to fund it. It's a good idea, though. I had not thought of that before. Will there be a T meter like Scientology's E meter? Yeah, we should definitely do that. That's a good idea. Is natural death process painful? Typically. That's what old age is. It's uncomfortable. Is there anything about the content of Hegel that I disagree with? What is it? There's a lot about Hegel I disagree with. I forget what the specific words and terms are. I haven't talked about him in a while. There used to be a guy at my philosophy club who was huge into Hegel. He used to read all his books, and we would discuss for like hours about him. I haven't read into Hegel in a long time. Add me to the chat. It's locked. Hegel, the chat isn't locked. I mean, you might have gotten banned, but it's not locked. You'd have to join the Patreon to get unbanned, I think. Because Patreon, if you subscribe to the $5 level on Patreon, then it'll give you a link to link your Discord account with your Patreon account, and it'll make you a mod on the Discord. Give you mod power. So that's how you get unbanned. Anyone else got any questions, comments, debates coming up, topics they've been interested in debating, thinking about recently? Thoughts on PNR and Darth Dawkins, Mr. Batman? I don't ever go into PNR, so I don't really know. Like, I don't really know much about the drama that is PNR. People say that it's really, I don't know, chaotic, but I don't go in there, so I don't really have an opinion. Darth Dawkins and Mr. Batman are typical precepts. I mean, they're good for views, so I'm glad that they're around, even though they say really silly things. Hello, Daniel Tingsvit. Thank God I don't have to work today. TjumpsChair. Do you play bullet chess? I usually play rapid, so 2+1, 2 minutes plus 1 second every move. I have played bullet. My bullet ranking was 1900 and something. But I was not as much of a fan of bullet. Anybody else got any questions, comments? Do we have any events set up in this? No, we have no events in the Discord. We need more events.
I'm trying to get a debate up with one of your admins. Quantum won't do it though.
Any thoughts on the foundations of mathematics? Well, I think math is the description of reality, so it's made up like a language like English. Mango T has received a timeout and can't join. Well, did you sub to the Patreon?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Trying to get a debate up with your admins.
Echo. So who is it who asked if I could hear them?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I just had a quick question for you. So what do you say to somebody who comes back with, the whole I think therefore I am thing? It's obviously just an observation. What do you say to someone who says that you could be wrong about that because you say you're certain about that and you can't be wrong? What do you say to someone who says that you could actually be wrong about that just simple observation? And then they
ask how? How
right,
could I?
Then,
how can I believe I exist and I'm wrong? Be wrong. How can I believe I exist and be wrong?
And if they say, well, I don't have to know how, but there could be a way, then what do you say to that?
You're an idiot.
Okay.
How do you know there could be a way if you don't know that there's a way?
Well, I'm saying they would say, I wouldn't make a claim either way, but it's possible. So you saying you're certain isn't true.
Well, that's what we're saying.
Might be a way.
We're asking, how is it possible? Like, how is it possible? The fact that you don't know it's not possible doesn't make it possible. So like, how do you know it's possible for there to be a way for me to believe I exist and be wrong?
And the fact that you don't know that you don't know that there's not a way also doesn't mean it has to be so.
Well, it's logic. So you can say, how can an object be itself and not itself? And you can say it's possible. Like, well, how? The burden of proof is on you. The guy saying it.
I would agree. Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely agree that the burden of proof. But what I'm saying is there is still possibly, I mean, you can't know for certain that there isn't a possibility, right? Like you just think there isn't, as far as you can tell from your limited knowledge.
You can know with absolute 100% certainty that I think I exist, I must exist, because the thing we're talking about is the thinking. If for that to be false, if there's any way for that to be false, then the thinking must not exist, and therefore you must not be thinking. But your direct experience is there, so it can't not be there. So there's no way for you to be, there's no ignorance that could possibly, anything you could discover about the universe that could make that false.
Yeah, that's what I keep coming back to too. That's how I keep saying it. But they just keep saying that just because I don't know how it's possible doesn't mean it can't be.
That's where you just make fun of them, call them an idiot. Like if someone says something so stupid that you don't even need to refute it, you just call them an idiot and laugh. That is a valid way to address them.
It's valid.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I get to. So, okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page on that, because that's how I ended up ending the conversation as well, is just kind of laugh and be like, okay, sure, whatever you say.
Yep, that is the best way to do it. It's like if somebody says 1 + 1 = 7, you just laugh at them and call them dumb. Like that, you don't even need to refute at that point.
Exactly. It's so illogical that it's not even worth talking about, because then anything could be. So it's just pointless.
Yep. Mango, I cannot remove you from timeout because I don't even know how to do that. S. Aston, do you think the universe is a predator-prey, strongest consumes and grows scenario? If so, is humanity fighting against the natural order with compassion and equality? Okay, so the way I interpret that question is survival of the fittest, and does compassion and equality contradict survival of the fittest? Sort of. So if we wanted to, let's say if our ultimate goal is to fight against the universe and to make humans thrive the most effective way possible, then our best way to do that would be like to use eugenics to genetically design humans to be the best, longest living things possible. And since we're not doing that and we're trying to just give people the happiest lives they can, we are technically not building the strongest humans we can. But we don't have like the expressed goal of like fighting against nature as humans. So we're just trying to live and be happy. So if our goal was to specifically make humans to survive the longest in the fastest possible way, eugenics would probably be the best way to do it. But that's not the goal. Our goal is to just live happy lives and be moral. If you could have a pet-sized animal or any non-pet sized animal on Earth, what would you choose? Small dog size-ish? Probably something that's extremely expensive. What is that? The fish, the super expensive arakami something fish that sells for like $10,000 per. I'd pick one of those and then reproduce it. And then sell it. Make money.
Just to follow up to the last question, do you think, in terms of certainty, obviously you have 100% certainty that you exist. Do you think you can have certainty in anything else, like external to yourself?
I am certain that I am imagining a unicorn right now. I am certain that I am perceiving a TV. I am certain that my direct experience is the things I'm directly experiencing.
So things in your imagination, basically.
Yes.
Anything outside your imagination? The external world?
No, that's stops being certain, then it's just highly probable.
Right.
Hey, T-Jump.
Yeah.
Quick question. I love your morality, and it's amazing that you actually formulated that yourself. Have you gone or sought any I guess to write a paper about it or get peer reviewed on your views?
I'm trying to write a book, but I don't have a publisher for it.
See.
I haven't tried publishing like academic papers because it's way too much work.
Yeah.
Like, I'd like to do that if I had some professors who are willing to like spend time to actually help me write it and do like most of the work writing it for me. Then yeah, I'd love to do that, but I don't have enough experience or want to spend the time to actually like write an academic paper with all of the academic requirements that it would be required to actually publish. Arowana, that's it. Simply Secular Dave. Arowana is one of the fancy fishes that sell for a lot of money.
Finally joined. Can you distinguish between free will that you say is illusory and will itself that is a necessary component of the imposition of will? Because I didn't get that before.
Will is just desires. Free will is like libertarian, the ability for it to be unaffected by any other prerequisite conditions. So desires are just desires. They're pretty easy. Free will is logically contradictory.
Okay, distinguishing free will from freely acting, like you're not free from all constraints, but you could make a choice of like what you want, the desire. You could make a choice on the desire.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
yeah,
be
so-
considered free will to you.
Yeah, that'd
Just
be
will.
like compatibilism. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, T-Jump, do you have anger?
I can't hear you. What?
Do you have anger?
Anger? When I lose at chess, I have anger.
Cool. Do you have hatred towards others?
When I lose at chess,
No, do you have hatred towards others?
when I lose at chess, yes, I hate the person who beat me very much.
And so, just to confirm, you have anger. Is that right?
When I lose at chess, yes.
I'm not talking about chess. I'm just talking about overall.
Overall, no.
Do you have any resentment towards anyone?
No.
Do you love black people?
Yes.
Do you love white people?
Yes.
Do you love all people?
No.
So you don't love all people?
No.
Cool. So you have anger?
No.
Sounds like you have resentment. And you don't love all people.
Anger isn't the opposite of love.
Yeah. So like you can like be apathetic towards somebody and not be angry towards them. So I don't love you, but I don't hate you either.
Right. Well, if someone spilled coffee on your shirt, would you react to that?
Like, would I be angry at them? Probably not. No.
Is there something that someone would do to you that would make you angry?
Harming the girl I'm dating would make me angry.
Okay, that's good to know. Do you obey your thoughts?
Do I obey my thoughts?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Do you get jittery and jumpy at times?
If I have too much coffee.
I'm not talking about coffee. I'm talking about, in general. Do you
No. Only if I like have too many intoxicants.
Are you in your mind quite a bit?
I'm never not in my mind.
So, do you feel like you're disconnected from reality when you're in your mind?
No, that's still a part of reality.
Right. Just because something is part of it doesn't mean that you're separated from it. You know that?
I think that's literally what it means. If you're a part of something, then you're not separated from the thing you're a part of because you're a part of it.
No, something can be part of something. It could also cause you to separate yourself from the other parts. Do you agree?
Something can be part of something, but separated from the other parts of the something?
Absolutely, that's achievable.
Sure. So like I could be a part of the universe, but not a part of the Andromeda Galaxy.
Exactly. So what you said there just made no sense. You said, "Oh, I'm part of reality store." No, you are still part of reality. You're in a different reality, and you've sort of separated yourself from the main reality.
No, because reality is a part of reality. So I can be a part of reality, but not a part of some part of reality, but I'm still part of reality as a whole. Like that doesn't make any sense.
It does make sense.
Does not make sense.
Like for instance, a computer has many processes, right?
You're a potato.
You could be browsing. You could be browsing on a computer. You could be looking at one tab, but there are multiple tabs open. Does that mean you are in all of those tabs at once? No, you're not. You're in one specific tab.
But are you in the internet?
When you're in your mind, you are removing yourself from reality.
No, that's not how it
Part
works.
of reality. That's how it works. You treat women as a god.
I don't believe there is a God, so I treat no one as God.
Is there something that you can't live without?
What?
Is there something that you go? Is there something that you pay close attention to in your daily life?
God bless you.
Something I pay close attention to in my daily life. My bank account?
Yes. Like, is there like a specific game that you like to play, or is there like
Chess?
someone that you like to talk to? Like, is there something that you go towards every day, daily, for comfort and whatever?
Coffee?
Let's remove like the general stuff, right? Like that's different. But okay, coffee. Is there anything else?
S. Austin, do you think the right to post educational content online should be monitored more strictly? Probably not. I think it's strictly enough. Why is everyone saying bless me? There's nothing to bless me. Who's gonna bless me? The spaghetti monster?
So you mentioned that there are multiple things that you go to every day. Is that right?
What?
For comfort and
I think we lost you, mate.
Chess and coffee are the things that I go to
So could you
comfort.
repeat that again? Sorry, you said coffee and
Chess, winning at chess.
winning at chess. Okay, cool. If I removed chess from your life, how would you react to that?
I would probably play other video games. That'd probably be a benefit. I'm addicted to chess, so that would be a benefit to my life most likely.
Okay, it looks like you sort of worship video games. Is that right? Is that a fair assessment?
Sure.
Cool. So video games is your god. It's one of your many gods.
It's a god. I don't think it's a god. Video games cannot create things out of nothing. I wish they could. That
It's
would be
your
great.
god. There's a difference between something being your god and something being a god.
Great. I don't have any gods. There are no gods. They don't exist.
There is a difference between something being your god and then something being a god.
There's also a
Do you
difference
agree with
between a
that?
god and an idol. So what you're really trying to say is that video games are your idol.
Well, how
Sometimes
can
they're used interchangeably.
I don't think video games could be a god or an idol.
Exactly.
So if I removed video games from your life, how would you react to that?
I would find a different hobby.
Okay. So it looks like it sounds like you just go around in circles and for distractions, basically.
Yes, so I do some fun things, and if I can't do one fun thing, I do a different fun thing. That's normally what you do. If you can't do one fun thing, you do a different thing for fun.
Right. So you proactively go out there and search for the next fun thing?
Yes, I go out and search for fun things to do. Yes.
Cool. And how many hours do you spend doing these fun things?
As many as I can.
So it sounds like you devote quite a significant amount of hours to these so-called fun things. Is that correct?
Yes, I try to dedicate many hours to fun. Yes.
Cool. Right. Yeah, you've answered all my questions. Yeah, you've just proven to me that, there's a bit of resentment that you still have. I'm not sure you're resenting quite a few items there that you sort of go towards as your card. Interesting observation. It sounds like you have a female mind.
I have wine?
From that follow.
It did follow. You mentioned that
AOE 4. What is? No, I do not play Age of Empires 4. I do not play that. The only strategy game I like is StarCraft mostly.
Oh, doesn't even care about your bago. That's awesome.
Is this ASM Dawkins? I don't know who ASM Dawkins is. ASMR Dawkins. ASMR is awesome though. T-Jump, this guy is like a ghost train during a power cut. Age of Empires 4. I do not play Age of Empires 4.
What could you possibly like in ASMR? Is it like nails on a chalkboard or something? Like what could you possibly like the sound of so much?
Nails on a chalkboard is like the opposite of ASMR. That's a painful scratching. ASMR, autonomous sensory meridian response, is usually a very pleasant, relaxing sensation.
Right. I don't find any noise ever pleasant, really. Like, what do you find pleasant? I'm curious.
I like whispering.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, that's creepy.
I mean, technically, all pleasure and all pain is subject to the individual. So,
true.
Not necessarily, unless you have objective, which is the thing.
Well, so like
how would you justify an objective sense in that case? How can every single person like X when other people don't like X?
Because they haven't gone through the process to get to the point where they can feel that pleasure.
So
no, it's usually just neurology. So neurologically, some people find some things pleasant and others don't because it stimulates the correct sensations in your brain. So it's
That's
not
exactly
usually
what I'm trying to say.
That was not. It's not even close to what you said.
You went through certain processes in order to get to that sensation.
Yes.
And so if they followed your exact pattern, then they would also experience the same sensations.
No, because the pattern was biology, and so you couldn't actually follow the pattern. It was just physics that followed the pattern. So you're confusing actions and choices with biological determinism.
Do you agree that action precedes any form of biological response?
Not choice actions, no. Have I heard of Max Stimmer? No, I have not heard of Max Stimmer. He says that people are religious in many ways. Max Max Stirner?
There is objective pleasantary sensations. They exist. Hey,
He's dead.
Can you change objective reality?
In some ways.
Therefore, you can change objective morality, and so therefore your argument falls.
No. Like you can change objective reality in lots of ways by like moving a table. You've changed the location of the table in objective reality.
And You agree that you can change objective morality?
No.
Yes, you can.
No, you
Because
can't.
you can change objectivity. You can change objective morality, and so therefore your argument
No, that is what's called a composition division fallacy. The fact that you can change some things about objective reality does not mean you can change all things or any things about objective reality.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Your argument predicates that objective morality cannot be altered. We've just agreed that objective reality can change, so therefore anything that is labeled objective can change.
No. So the fact that you can change some objective things does not mean you can change all objective things. It's composition division fallacy.
It's not a composition of division fallacy.
Literally a composition division
not.
fallacy.
It's not. It's the altercation and the manipulation of.
Altercation means a
not
fight.
The composition.
Ugh.
No. What?
You don't know what these words mean.
I do. I did not say altercation.
You mean alteration?
That's exactly what I said. And this is the thing with TJump. You misinterpret everything.
No, you said altercation, bro.
I said no. That's not what I said. I said alteration.
You said altercation. It's okay though.
S. Aston, do you think Darth Dawkins' flowchart is laminated?
We have it on video. We could just.
That might have been a slip of the tongue.
Now he admits it.
Irrespective. You're referring to the composition fallacy. Has nothing to do with the manipulation and the alteration, adjustment, adaptation, and the modification of something objective.
Can you like fix the fact that you're like puffing into your mic? You're going.
To me?
Yes, you.
Yeah. Oh, is this any better?
Maybe.
I suggest a pop filter if you can't.
It's given a composition fallacy that has no.
What is a composition fallacy? Do you know what a composition fallacy is?
Go ahead, explain it to me.
Oh, I don't want to explain it. I want to know if you know what it is.
Go ahead and explain it to me.
No. I want you to tell me what it is. You tell me. You tell me what it is.
You brought it up. So
Yes.
give me the definition.
Yes, I did call it out. I want to know if you know what it is because you said it's not that.
Something is labeled objective. It is able to undergo.
Someone get this dude a Red Bull.
And modification. Okay. And therefore, because it can be modified, adapted, and altered, objective morality can be altered as well. Therefore, your argument falls.
So did you Google composition fallacy? Please tell me what that is. Matthew V, we can hear your background noise. Something mute
You're
Matthew.
really hot, Mike.
Beowulf, can you mute Matthew V so we can't hear him?
So if the fallacy of composition is that
Jim Bob, you can
of
mute.
X
You're mod too.
P thus X itself has the property P.
Think.
That's composition fallacy.
What?
It's an informal fallacy, which means that we shouldn't heavily rely on it.
It's an informal fallacy, therefore we shouldn't have to rely on it. Oh, God.
Something's informal. What does that mean?
You tell me. What do you think it means? What's the difference between a formal and an informal fallacy?
I'm asking you.
Well, I'm asking you.
Something that is widely suitable or acceptable.
No.
And so therefore, yes.
That's not formal and informal fallacy mean very specific things in philosophy.
Anyways, you're digressing. It's an informal fallacy, which means that you don't have to look any further into the fallacy because it has no use into what we're actually discussing here now. When you examine anything labeled objective can be altered and modified, you have to agree, according to philosophy and logic, that objective morality can be altered.
No.
Therefore, your argument fails.
No.
And you just can't live with
that. I've explained to you why you're stupid, but you didn't get it, so we can move on now.
Which does not apply to
Georgie, thank you for the super chat. If all human minds become a hive mind at the same time, all of a sudden, which would prevail, irrationality or rational thinking? Irrationality would definitely win. We have Mango here as a demonstration of that.
You do realize that the fallacy of composition is just basically like a flaw in reasoning that weakens an argument, or that it's a trick of the thought used as a debate tactic. Again, I am not a debate tactic or trying to attempt to weaken your argument. In fact, I've disproved it, I've refuted it, and you failed. Give me a counter argument, and that's it.
I've already debunked you. Saying that one objective thing can change does not mean that all objective things can change.
We see this in science. Objective things change. Does everybody agree? Yes. Before objective morality changes. And just because you say, some things are objective, they change, then morality doesn't, you're ridiculous. You even admit it.
He's been timed out. I know how to time out now.
Nice.
I was just going to ask him to fix his mic because I could still hear him, unfortunately.
Hey, quick question for you. For your morality, what would you say is the best objection you've ever heard to your moral theory?
Best objection?
If any.
I mean,
I haven't even heard one.
Well, like the first thing is that there isn't any strong evidence for objective morality right now. All we have is evolution. That's the best evidence we have is evolution is a product of evolution, or morality is a product of evolution. So mine is a hypothetical hypothesis that says that we could have evidence of this in the future. But I don't think anyone's ever actually addressed the model of the best of all possible worlds and tried to assess if there's a better version of morality, because no one's ever argued that, oh, there's a better version of morality out there. Like, no, that's not a thing people have argued. So they haven't really addressed the model itself. They're just arguing, well, you don't have any strong evidence for it. Like, all right. But even if, like, so I think the thing I'd like to debate on morality is, if we had evidence there was objective morality, we know objective morality is there, what would be the best candidate model for it? And I think mine would be the best candidate model for it. And no one's ever tried to like argue against that, except for like the troll synth last week with the utilitarianism.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, I literally, for the life of me, I can't think of anything that would work better than that. It seems to fit every single situation as perfectly as you possibly could. So yeah, I'm really curious if anybody could ever come up with anything better. I can't see it.
Yeah, me too. That's definitely a topic I want to debate more. Georgie, thank you for the super chat. Can we all agree to boo that person from the stage? Yes, we can boo Mango from the stage. Tinkle Tink says, I'm banned from the TJump server. The mods can be very stuck up. I don't disagree with that statement, but the best way to do it is to sub to my Patreon at the $5 level and become a mod.
Obviously, we live in a determined world where free will doesn't exist, but I tried to read into it a little bit. I can't for the life of me understand, is compatibilism compatible with determinism, or is it just something that's completely like, if you believe in compatibilism, you're off base, like you can't be right because determinism is real?
Compatibilism is the position that free will is compatible with determinism. So it is, yes, it is compatible with determinism.
Okay, so you would say compatibilists are correct, or how would you say that?
So what they're saying is that free will is a product of the brain being able to function without external sources, and so even though you're actually determined in physics, you still have free will. It's just not what theists call free will. So they're changing the definition of free will to be a determined process in the brain, essentially.
And would you agree or disagree with that?
I mean, I'm a determinist, so I mean, I'd agree. Like, yeah, sure, you can that's just changing the definition of free will. So if sure, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, I just wanted to check. See, and that's what I thought. I thought it could go along with it. I didn't think they were directly opposed in any way. I just wanted to make sure that was correct.
Yeah, compatibilism is just a kind of determinism.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Wouldn't a fair contention to best of all simply be that best is arbitrary, given by whatever one's personal preference or intention is?
No. Because the best isn't actually part of the argument. So the best is just a label. We're saying if there is an objective morality, what do we think the correct model is going to be? So best is just a word we use to describe that. So it's not, the word best itself isn't in anywhere acquired or a part of the model. It's like a name.
Oh, you're referring to best as the outcome if your model is followed, what it would produce?
No, I'm saying like which theory is the one that most likely corresponds to reality. That's the best one.
Oh, okay. The most consistent with reality, what you call best, it matches with what you call moral, I guess.
Sort of.
Matching moral with best.
Sort of. It's more like best would be is what I think is the world that maximizes the moral principle. So if you say the best of all possible worlds is one where we all obey God's laws or something, in that model, the best world is like heaven or whatever. In my world, the best of all possible worlds is one where we maximize the principle that any involuntary imposition of will is minimized. And so in mine, the best world is one where there's no involuntary imposition of will. So the best world is just the one where the moral principle has been maximized. And we want to say that if there is an objective moral principle, then that's the one we want to maximize. And so they're the correct best of all possible worlds.
Got it. So the effectiveness of your model, the objectiveness of your model would be the measure to which the world matches your intentions, but the intention itself must still be arbitrary, given if it's just your decision to say, well, I want to seek this outcome or whatever you said, diminished, what is it? Diminished imposition of will is equal to morally good, right?
Well, that's the hypothesis. That's not arbitrary. That's based on the evidence of moral intuition, moral progress, and predictions. But all of the hypotheses are all something somebody made up.
Right. With that, have you carried that out to its end, to certain ends that you might not agree with? Let's say, is it consistent to say the imposition of will itself could render a scenario where everyone's kind of just like not actually doing anything at all? They're just kind of like hooked up to like a float tank or something like that?
What? Can you ask that differently?
Saying that if the imposition of will could be totally removed itself, would that be consistent with your model?
No, not unless everyone decided they wanted that. So like it has to go from where we are now to this place. So if anyone's will right now is imposed upon, that would be immoral. So if like forced everybody in the Matrix, that would be immoral because they didn't want that.
Right. But you could still obtain that outcome with something immoral, because in your worldview, killing someone's still immoral, but it's justified. So you're saying it still could be justified, though, if, let's say, there was a way to implement that overnight, let's say, and it was actually against some people's will, it was in line with other people's will, but in your view, it could be justified even if it's immoral, and it rendered that situation possible. So it's like you could kill someone, and from your view, it's still immoral. It's just justified. It's like doesn't make it not moral. But yeah, I guess the
What?
Are you asking, do the ends justify the means?
In that scenario, could it occur that the ends justify the means?
It can be justified to kill a minority to get to a place with the best of all possible worlds. It'd still be immoral, though. It's still an involuntary imposition of will, so it's still immoral. Justified doesn't mean moral, so.
Right. So you accept any certain behaviors that could, and you said a minority. Is there's a threshold where you determine that just 49%, or just is it lower?
Like justification.
In that condition.
Justification is the minimum required given our limitations in order to achieve the least imposition of will. So like it's determined not by like percentage, it's determined by what is required for us to technologically get to that point. So like if we're almost there, then it won't be justified at all, because killing anybody would be pointless. We're almost there. If we're very, very far away, we might have to make more sacrifices to get there. because of our limitations. So it's determined by how far away we are and what would actually be required to get there. So I mean,
Okay, so let's talk about technology then. If tech, and we're not at the point obviously, but let's say that technology, we're at a point, let's just skip to the future where we all still exist. We're in a future where the technology is actually there to do that, to implement the system that I just kind of constructed, where people are just connected and the imposition of will is impossible. Let's say the tech was there and it was totally possible, but 62% of people weren't on board, even though if you pushed a button, those people wouldn't necessarily be killed. They would just have their imposition of will removed. Would you push the button?
Well, no, because you could just do it without affecting them. So there'd be no point to force them into it.
Oh, you mean you just choose the people who want to do that and then leave the others out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's an option.
Yeah. Like, I don't think it's actually possible where it's like, you must force everyone in at the exact same time. And then is it justified to force everyone in for the majority? I mean, like, at that point, like, maybe, like, you'd say, if 75% of the people really want to be in the best of all possible worlds and stop suffering, the fact that 25% of the people want to continue to suffer and be in this world, like, and if the only option was press a button and everyone has to be affected at the same time, there's no, like, you can choose, then it's something, yeah, you can say it's justified to push the button at that time. It's still immoral because you're forcing them in without their consent, but it would be justified at that point.
Okay. Yeah, that's consistent.
Georgie, would you sum up why presup is flawed? Thanks. Presup is the argument that in order to have any knowledge at all, you need to presuppose the existence of a God. The reason it's flawed is because you don't. There's no reason to think that you would need a God to have knowledge. Knowledge is just the correspondence of your beliefs to reality. And presups argue that the reason you can't have knowledge is because you don't have 100% certainty. And they think that God gives you 100% certainty, which it doesn't. That's one problem with presup, is that God doesn't solve any of the problems in philosophy, so it doesn't give you any level of certainty. So the major problem with presup is that they say, here are a bunch of problems in philosophy that you can't solve, but they can't solve those problems either, and so their God doesn't give you certainty. That's the major problem, is that their solution doesn't actually solve any of the problems that they are presenting.
Can you hear me? Oh.
What?
What would you say is the greatest argument I mean, obviously none of them work that well, but out of all the arguments you've ever heard for theism, just any generic God, what would you say the best one is?
So the best evidence for God I've ever heard is in Hinduism. It is the prediction of the age of the earth in the Bhagavad Gita, which says the earth is 4.3 billion years old. So it was close. 4.5 is the actual age. So the fact that it accurately predicted the age of the earth to that level of accuracy is very good. That's the best evidence for God I've ever seen. You need a lot more than that, but
I just watched that debate that you had with the guy who talked about multiplying it by 2. Did you ever come to anything from that, or do you think he's just wrong?
Well, I can't read any of the Vedic texts in their actual language to know if that's right or not. Like that, you got to ask the guys who can actually read the actual text and know what it says, because I have no idea.
Exactly. I wasn't sure if you'd come across any actual text, like in the peer-reviewed literature, that said anything further about that, or if it just still seems like it's just him kind of post-hoc making that up.
Well, he actually published it in an academic journal, so I haven't tried to find any of like the responses or anything, or tried to read them, but you might be able to check that, because that was, I think, a few years ago. But that would be the place to check for sure. I don't think he's made any like waves in the academic community though.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything on it, so okay, just curious. So what you're saying is, if you had to choose a religion, you'd be a Hindu.
I'd probably be a Jain.
Yeah, me too.
I think Jains have the best moral system.
Definitely seems to go most along with your imposition of will thing.
Yep. Jainism is too extreme. Too extreme pacifist.
Got any particular thoughts on Buddhism? Seems kind of logical a little bit.
Minus all of the achieving enlightenment and becoming a part of the Dharma, part of the universe, but I think it's better than Christianity. Or
Yeah, exactly.
or
That's what I'm talking.
better than any of the Abrahamic religions.
Exactly.
I think Judaism is the least silly, maybe, of all of the. I don't know, because there's parts like I think Jesus is better than the Old Testament God, but I think Judaism as a much more secular organization is less crazy than Christianity, and they're both definitely better than Islam.
Do you think that in Islam, the people who keep saying that it's like a very pacifistic religion and that people are just misinterpreting those verses, they're just doing so post hoc, that it's just them kind of trying to justify themselves?
No, they are full of shit.
Okay, that's how I took it. I mean, it just seems so obvious on its face when you read the actual text.
Yep, I remember there was this one thing by Sam Harris where he did this comparison of the red-haired woman. Like, if there was in the text, it said, if there is a red-haired woman on your doorstep on Sunday, you're allowed to kill her or whatever, then we would find a lot of dead redheads. And there, the best part of his argument was when he said, even if we found like a lot of dead redheads on Sundays, people would be like, Islam apologists would say, oh, well, that's not really what Islam condones. Or they say like, oh, it's not really, we'll say they only allow beheading, not shooting. And so if someone's shot, they'd say, well, that's not really allowed by Islam. So clearly this isn't this redhead that was shot was not something that was allowed by Islam. So there's all these kinds of like silly apologetics where they nitpick about it and say, oh, see, it's not real Islam.
Yep. That's exactly how I see what they're doing.
T-Jump, if you could spend a day back in time, where would you go? Probably with the girl I'm dating on Saturdays. Just pick a Saturday, pretty much. I don't think I'd actually go back for anything interesting. Maybe go back, see Jesus' resurrection. But
hey Tom, have you ever been in New York City?
I don't think so. My sister has, because we have relatives who live there. Is that where you are?
Great city. I'm from New York.
Why? What's in New York City?
What'd you say, Tom?
What? Why did you ask? What's in New York City?
No, it's just a great city, you know. And I'm actually from New York City, so I was just curious. Have you ever been there?
Nice. No, I have not, but I hope to get some live debates there. Hopefully in Times Square or something, Madison Square Garden. Let's do it. Let's do a debate in Madison Square Garden.
What do you think is great about New York City? I'm curious.
I think that was it for you, Frank.
Frank? Yeah.
Well, it's very social, and I like they have lots of landmarks. So.
Yeah, I don't care about either of those things. Okay.
I think the social thing is important. I mean, that's still one of the things I struggle with the most is like how to be more social, and especially in like bar situations. And so having help with that is definitely, being in communities that make that easy is definitely something I would find important for sure.
Why do you want to be social? Like, do you think it makes you? Is it just something that makes you happy?
Meet more women, lots of attractive women.
Yeah, you can do that without being social. Though. There's a lot of socially awkward women.
No.
You don't think so? I guess I'm beg to differ.
Like my type is the models, the like perfect 10 super party girl types usually. So it's very, very hard for me to meet my type anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's the social anxiety thing is still something I struggle with a lot, which I don't like. So I definitely would like to be in more of social situations that make that easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's anybody that actually is just naturally like social, like their brain is wired that way, or do you think it's something that everybody has to overcome and just some people are better at overcoming it?
No, there's tons. Like extroverts are a real thing for sure.
You think?
Yep. Like you can see it in all ages that just like, I think they've actually measured it with fMRIs where you can see the level of cortisol that comes into their brain is like nothing when they go up and talk to somebody. Whereas for an introvert, it's a ton. They're just super stressed out by it. And it's even accentuated in people with Asperger's, like what I have. They are scared to death of those kinds of things where they get tons and tons and tons of cortisol.
Makes sense.
How often do I get called by telephone scammers? Not often. Very rarely.
Regarding those cortisol levels, is it possible that that's a learned skill that maybe you learn in really early childhood or something like that?
Well, it's definitely a learned skill. So practicing it helps a lot, but it's not just a learned skill. It's also biological. So like people with autism and Asperger's have, and introverts have a much more visceral stress-related reaction than other people. And not everyone does have that stress-related reaction. Georgie says, try men. Well, I would, but men are just not, I'm not physically attracted to them, unfortunately. Except for Frank. Frank is just gorgeous.
Coming to meet you, Tom.
What? I didn't say anything.
If you could choose any single person to debate, who would you choose to debate?
Just the one that would get me the most views and money, essentially.
Who do you think that would be?
Donald Trump.
Tom, are you and Biscuit gonna have round 3?
Probably.
He was actually a cool guy. Like he could at least admit when he's wrong, which is better than 99.9% of everybody.
Yep, definitely true. I want his free hoodies, so I got invited back on for the free hoodies. That's the ultimate goal here. Free hoodies. Is Mango the colors equal God guy? No, I thought the same thing, aka Drago. But no, Mango is an almost equally crazy person, but not the same person, because they were actually in, like, one was in the YouTube chat and one was in the Discord, and they were at the same time. So they are definitely different people. If you have fear of radiation, just catch a plane. Like, your radiation level is actually higher in a plane. I've actually been watching a lot of Metacore The guy who does reviews of plane crashes. That's actually a really interesting YouTube channel. Anybody else got anything interesting? Funny? Debates? Conversations? Any theists in the audience? What does the rainbow mean religiously? It means God will probably not drown babies again. Until he feels like it.
Hey Eddie, what's up, man?
What up? What up?
Eddie Brutefacts Podcast.
Hey, T-Jump, did you know that your TikTok is like skewed and sideways?
Yes, that's because I have it on my phone and I just pointed my phone at my TV screen.
Ah.
Because TikTok doesn't let me do the direct streaming with the stream key. So I'm bypassing their stupid shit system and just pointing my camera at my TV. And so one corner of my TV is farther away than the other corner of my TV, and that's why it looks skewed.
Did you do the request access for the?
Wait, how do you do that?
I'll send you it's a short YouTube video how to get the stream key. Every way to get a from TikTok.
Is that the one where you have to like send a request to the support chat and say, "Oh, I don't have this," and then they give it to you? Like I tried that method, it didn't work.
I don't remember. I sent it to a guy last night because it's a random feature.
Yep.
They just give to whoever the hell they want. There's no method at all.
Yep. Do you have one?
No, I don't.
Garbage. Georgie, who is Frankie? Frankie is one of the mods on the Discord and the YouTube. I think he says Frankie because the hammer symbol looked like a Y.
Hey, Eddie, did you tell Tom about your conversation with Darth Dawkins? That was funny.
Yeah, he gave me some good critical feedback on it. I made a few mistakes there, which I mean I knew I did, but he illuminated a couple other things I missed.
If aliens showed up, would I be happy or buy guns? It's an interesting question. Like, because typically, if we look at human society, when one group goes to a different location, it's usually just to take resources, and so we'd probably be afraid of that. But if my model of morality is correct, then it's more likely that they're more moral than we are, and so it'd probably be a good thing.
I just DM'd that video to you on Discord.
Oh, thanks. Yep.
What's the number one thing holding you back from getting the atheist church off the ground? Is it just money?
Yes.
That's what I figured.
So please give all of your money to T-Jump, the atheist church.
There we go.
Yes, they need to T-Jump that venture. I'm here all night.
Because yeah, if I had enough donors, I could start up I could self-identify as a 501c3 and then give you the tax exemption form if you give donations, and then buy the church locations. So yeah, it's definitely money.
Is there anything else, like if, let's say theoretically someone was able to give you enough money, would there be any other major obstacles that would cause it from starting?
Nope, I can just do it today.
Nice. Interesting.
like one of the things would be the tax filings takes about 9 months to file for a 501c3 with the IRS, but you can self-identify as a tax exempt. So you don't actually need the tax filings. They just do that.
Gotcha.
In case the IRS audits you and finds out that you're not actually a nonprofit, then that would be bad. You have to pay a lot of taxes, but as long as you actually are one, you act as a 501c3, then you're fine.
Hey, Jump. I have a question about God.
Does not
Is
exist.
So one of the things is that you say that nature exists, right? You can just say that some mindless nature or naturalistic pantheism. However, matter or nature is always in a state of moving, right? All the physical stuff that we know.
Yep.
So must it be that this initial state, whatever it is, the mindless state, must it be static then? Because like change, movement implies change, and change would make it not. Change would make it like the basic idea is that necessary being cannot change, because if it does change, then it's temporal in some sense.
Yeah, that's a really silly argument that theists make all the time, which has never made any sense. It makes absolutely no sense to say there is an unchanging like essence of pure being. It's completely incoherent. So yeah, there's no problem with saying there's like a changing necessary thing, or like a necessary field and a necessary changing thing in that field, or two necessary things that interact and change all the time. It doesn't make any sense to say that it's unchanging.
Do you think they're just trying to feed it into the definition of God so that they can dismiss materialism?
Yes. Like nothing in the Bible says God is unchanging. That's it's such a silly argument. It makes no sense.
But wait, what if it's someone who's not attached to the Bible or the Quran or something?
Well, usually it's just an argument that has come from hearing other theists from the Bible or the Quran make that argument, like, oh, so we can just make that argument too, kind of a thing. I don't know of any actual genuine argument that says that must be the case. There's nothing that indicates that a God must be changeless. And pretty much everybody thinks that, yeah, God, if it was a mind, changes its opinion all the time and does stuff. So I've never really heard any coherent explanation of why there must be a changeless thing.
So what about divine simplicity? Like everything is just an act.
Yeah, completely incoherent gibberish. Like it makes no sense to say that. There's no philosophically coherent explanation of what that means.
What do you think about the logical problem of evil? Because this keeps coming up in Clubhouse, right? And then I find it very convincing. But then the fact that God does not forgive everyone, right? Like it takes away from the omnibenevolent part, right? What do you think about the whole argument in general? Does it disprove God?
Wait, those are two different things. So the logical problem of evil and God doesn't forgive everyone? What is
so the logical problem of evil would entail the tri-omni God, right? Which is the omnibenevolent would be one property.
Right? Well, the logical problem of evil says that there's a contradiction between it's impossible for there to be a perfectly loving being because of some reason.
Yeah, like if the tri-omni God exists, then evil does not exist. The fact that evil exists disproves this God.
Yeah.
So in which I see what you're saying. Okay. So
that's just one example. There's lots of different, like, logical problem of evil is just any reason why it's impossible for there to be a God because there is evil. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the tri-omni God. It's just any morally perfect being.
Okay. So in that sense, then, what if the theodicy is that free will? I think the free will doesn't work because God has free will, right? And he can exist without evil. Similarly, like heaven people can live with free will in heaven. So it's logically possible, right?
Well, so the first thing is that in philosophy, very few philosophers accept the logical problem of evil, because the logical problem of evil shows that, or claims that, it's logically impossible, like P and not P kind of a thing, for there to be a all good being and for some evil to exist. Whereas Alvin Plantinga and the sufficient reason apologists say, well, maybe there's some reason that God would allow this that we just don't know yet. In which case it's not logically impossible. It's just evidentially bad. So it's very unlikely. And so most philosophers take the evidential problem of evil and say it's highly improbable for a all-loving being to allow evil or whatever. I personally like the logical problem because I think you can show that it's impossible, because you could say, even if there is some sufficient reason for God to allow certain evils, that can be overturned because there could be a way to allow the benefits, whatever those may be, without the evils, by just making them optional. Make them optional for people, problem solved. And so it is logically impossible for there to be an all-loving God to create involuntary evils.
Correct, right. And that's the intuition here, is that if, let's say they give the example of a vaccine, right? Sometimes you have to give a vaccine to actually for a better good, but then God can actually surely achieve that better good without having them to go through the vaccine or the suffering, right?
Yep.
So what reason could there be?
Yeah. Per Pokerman, there's a link to the Discord in the bottom right-hand corner. Anybody should be able to use that to join.
Could you elaborate on the omniscience, Wittgenstein's omniscience impossibility?
Wittgenstein's paradox of omniscience from his Tractatus. It's like a few sentences right before he begins the logical Tractatus Philosophico, whatever it's called. And it's something like, it's exactly the same problem as Gödel's incompleteness theorem and those kinds of problems that show that in a set of known things, in order to know that that set is the complete set, you'd have to know a fact outside of that set of known things. And so no matter how large your set of known facts is, to know that all of those things are all of the things, you need to have a known thing outside of that set. So to have perfect omniscience, you would have to have all of your knowledge plus some extra knowledge that's more than what you currently have.
But wouldn't that mean that you're no longer talking about God? Because God would know by definition, analytically, know the truth value of all propositions.
Well, no, that's why it's saying it's impossible. It's impossible to know all things, because even if you were God, to know that you know all things would require an extra thing beyond what you already know. Like it's provably analytically the case that in order to have like a justification or knowledge, because Gödel's incompleteness theorem says that it's impossible to show that mathematics or logic are perfectly consistent without reference to an external math or logic. And the same thing applies to knowledge or God's knowledge. So even if God's knowledge was complete, in order to show or know that it was complete, would require a reference to an external kind of knowledge or an external kind of logic that was outside of God's knowledge. So it's impossible to have omniscient, perfect knowledge without reference to an external kind of knowledge that you don't have.
So that would mean like the Cartesian skepticism is false, right?
What would it mean that omniscience is false? I don't know about Cartesian skepticism there.
So because like you could just be a disembodied mind, and you could be certain about that you exist as a mind, right? But what you seem to be saying is that you cannot have certainty in such a scenario, in a Cartesian scenario, if an external world doesn't exist.
It's not about certainty. This is about knowing literally everything. To know literally all knowledge things ever, you couldn't do that, because to do that would require, by definition, an external knowledge to what you know. It doesn't have anything to do with certainty there. It doesn't address Cartesian knowledge about like your own existence or any in particular fact. So the fact that you can't have all knowledge doesn't mean you can't have any knowledge.
Okay, I see the difference. Okay, that's fine. But then didn't Gödel himself offer a proof for God's existence? So maybe just not an omniscient one.
He thought God existed. It was very silly, but he thought it was.
But then he must not think that the God he believes in is omniscient, right?
I do not remember his position on God or how he thought God worked, but it definitely wasn't like standard.
But if you're saying like a second theorem disproves omniscience, how can he hold at the same time that his God is omniscient?
He probably wouldn't. but I didn't study anything into his positions on God.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
What, in your opinion, is the absolute fastest way to defeat a Christian? I would say it seems
in a
like
debate.
Yeah. Yeah, my thoughts is the quickest one is the free will thing. If you just make the argument that free will is obviously impossible, then unless they're Calvinist, it just ends it right there.
I want to go with something that is intuitive for most people. Most people feel like we have free will, so I probably wouldn't go with the free will debate. I like the God drowned babies argument. I think that's the best one.
What version of it? Just the fact that he's evil?
Yeah. So like God is supposedly perfectly good. Drowning babies is evil. God drowned babies, God is evil. Jesus drowned babies. Jesus drowned babies is the best version.
But then isn't it like that presumes that drowning babies is bad?
Yeah, because it's the reason this is good for defeating Christians is that you want an argument that people can mostly intuitively understand. And so if most people intuitively understand drowning babies is evil, and you say Jesus drowned babies, then they're going to intuitively agree, and you're not going to need much explanation. What makes an argument best for defeating someone quickly is if it's so obvious and so intuitive to everybody that you don't need to explain it. And so that's
But
if you
wouldn't
want
that
to
be an
win.
appeal to emotion fallacy?
No, it's like if you want to win a debate quickly, that would be how to do it.
I feel like people are so religious, like since there's so many religious people, that it's actually most religions would actually say that that's not intuitively wrong, and so there's actually a good portion of people out there that don't believe drowning babies is wrong, which sounds weird, but I really think that's true.
Well, that's because this debate leads to the question of the atheist is saying drowning babies is wrong, and the Christian is saying drowning babies is perfectly moral, and that causes a lot of cognitive dissonance when people are saying it's okay to drown babies. And if they keep having to defend this, it's going to keep causing this very stressful emotional strain on people. That the Christian is saying it's okay to drown babies here. This doesn't work. Something's wrong here, and so that cognitive dissonance is the best way to win debates, essentially.
I can see
I
that.
think this is a very important point, because I think theists thrive on this kind of thing, right? Like atheists are very immoral people, even though like most atheists would be like moral realists, let's say, right? But then what the theist is doing is appealing to emotions, right? They wanna convert people. So I think like a similar strategy could be used by the theist, like you mentioned. But then of course this has got nothing to do with like completely analytically sound arguments, right? This is just like debate tactic.
Sort of. I mean, like the argument is perfectly fine. It's a perfectly rational argument. But if the goal is to win quickly, then you need to combine both a rational argument with something that's intuitive and people to understand. So since his question was like, how do you win an argument quickly? You've got to use both.
But then wouldn't you have to establish a good standard of good outside of like just the intuition?
No, you can just say that our intuition seems to indicate that there is such a thing. So if you accept that there is such a thing, here would be the consequences of that.
But intuition can't count for evidence, right?
It can.
Count as evidence.
Like you have an intuition that object cannot be fully red and fully green at the same time. Like intuition isn't proof, but it can definitely count as evidence.
In that sense, like intuition of God could also count as evidence for God.
It could. Doesn't though, because it's so faulty. Like if we know for a fact the kind of intuition can lead to lots of falsehoods, then it's an unreliable intuition.
I see. Okay, so you're saying like if you have an intuition that drowning babies is immoral, and then if every society we see that they seem to agree, then that's actually stronger evidence.
Yeah, then if it was just random and some societies agreed, some societies didn't agree, because there's a pattern to it, that's better than if there was no pattern.
But there's a pattern to theists believing, right? Like most people are theists.
Well, just believing in a God isn't a pattern. It's like it's because of how they believe and what they believe. It's totally arbitrary. There's no pattern of like moral progress. Like moral progress, there's a pattern of like how we see societies change and agree and progress in the same direction. That doesn't happen with God belief. God belief is totally random and arbitrary and changes in whatever way we just feel like.
Yeah, couldn't you say that people, when they go through a difficult time, they all look out for a God? So that's a pattern.
No, because they don't. Like the atheist and foxhole thing is demonstrably false.
I've never heard that. What's atheist in a foxhole?
There's a statement by religious people that says there are no atheists in foxholes. Foxholes are like the trenches you dig in war to get cover from bullets. And so the statement implies that most people, when they're in a stressful situation and they're going to like threat of death, they turn to a god. But scientifically, that's false. Like that doesn't happen. Like the studies show that there are actually atheists in foxholes, that they do in stressful situations don't actually ask God for forgiveness or whatever. It's cultural.
Yeah, that's 100%. I mean, I'm living proof of that. I mean, I've nearly died a couple times and never once did I think, oh, I need God.
Randolph, God sucks at marketing. That's why he results to threats.
What's your favorite debate that you ever watched?
I like mine. I like the one I did with Robin Collins. That one's one of my favorites. But of not me, I don't remember what it was. There was one I watched with an atheist-theist debate, but it was just like a college one that was like hand recorded on a video recorder. I don't remember who it was, but it had a lot of really interesting arguments that I thought were really interesting at the time. I don't remember, but again, don't remember who it was though.
So could you elaborate a little bit on so far the most convincing argument that I've found for God would be the DNA's code one, right? Like code needs a programmer and DNA's code. So you said that code can arise out of Shannon information theory. Could you elaborate like what that theory is and how could it be convincing that code can come out?
Shannon information theory, his paper 1950 something. The definition of information and codes says it's a result of a stochastic system. Stochastic means random. So just the definition of information and information theory specifically says that it can arise from random systems. And we can prove it can arise from random systems. It gives a bunch of examples in the paper. But I'd say, the best argument for God would be the Hindu age of the earth thingy. I think that's better than the code one.
Oh, because it has a novel prediction?
Yeah. So it's not an argument technically, it's more actual evidence.
Yeah, the novel prediction, right?
Yep. S. Austin, do you think God's message would be useful if there was an objective? I don't understand that question. Randolph, yeah, I'll see you Sunday for the panel on politics server, I think. Georgie, have I ever been invited to take part of any of the call-in shows like the Atheist Experience? Nope. Can anyone join the call? Yes. Just link in the bottom right. Christopher Hitchens versus Dennis Prager. That was rhetoric versus rhetoric. Where on Sunday? Well, I'll stream it here on Sunday, but it'll be in the politics server, probably on Discord. If God said we need to go to Mars, I don't think adding a goal changes anything. I think that Christianity and most religions have a goal. So I don't think adding a goal makes it more credible.
TJump, what do you think about the argument, like the precept argument that to know anything you need access to to that what is ultimate?
Doesn't make any sense at all. Like, why would you need access to what is ultimate? It's not coherent. Like, that's why I say, well, that's why I give the example of I exist. Like, I think, therefore I am. How can I think I exist and be wrong? Like, make up whatever ultimate you want, make that wrong.
But how do you know that would be true in any part of the universe, right?
Any part of it. Well,
so I think, like, with J. Robin, you said something like, there is nowhere I can go and think and not exist, right?
Well, it was more that there's nothing in the universe anywhere in all of existence right now that's making me not exist. So I can know that there's a fact about all of the universe.
Could you repeat that?
There's nothing in the universe anywhere at any point in time that is making me not think that I exist right now.
But you haven't explored the whole universe, right?
Well, I don't need to. I'm saying that, like, at no point in anywhere in that universe is that affecting me to make me not exist.
Oh, so you're saying even if it's true that at some point it could not be true, it's not affecting you at this moment.
Yeah.
So
I know that I know one fact about absolutely everything in all of existence, everywhere at all times, in that it's not making me not exist in this moment. So I can say one fact is universally true about all other existing things.
Oh, so you're saying that you can say this one thing about what is ultimate.
Yeah,
it's reality.
Yeah, it's, I can say whatever the facts about reality are, I know none of them are making me not exist right now.
You know, T-Jump, that Jesus was Jupiter.
Mango's back. And he's breathing into his mic again.
Am I breathing into my mic right now?
And we can't hear him talk because he's too quiet.
How about now?
A little better.
So have you heard of the saying that Jesus was Jupiter?
Still super quiet, can't hear you.
Have you heard of the saying that Jesus was Jupiter?
Jesus was Jupiter?
Yep.
Sounds Mormon.
So basically, like, there's a theory that Jupiter came in human form for the next 6,000 years to give his sort of testament so that we align with his sort of attributes. And then previous to Jupiter came Saturn or Satan with his Old Testament. And then after Jupiter or Jesus will come Mars in human form to plague the world with war.
Okay.
Obviously, he's known for he's the god of war.
That's nice, I guess. As an atheist, Captain Crunch, as an atheist, do you believe there is anything to ghosts or demons other than mental? Like perhaps something we have yet to discover? No, I think they're probably just mental.
I'm developing an argument for God that T-Jump can't even deny. I'm going to call it the T-Jump argument for God. If hot blondes exist, God exists. Hot blondes exist, therefore God exists.
I think it'd probably be the other way around. Yes, Randolph, I know Mango's volume is really low. No one can hear Mango. I don't think I did that, though. I don't think I did. Did I mute Mango? I don't think so.
So, T-Jump, in your experience, how does the theist define immaterial versus material? Because material, the way I understand, is like physical symbols, right, of which everything can emerge. But I never understood that what is this immaterial thing that they're claiming?
They usually just mean a different ontology, like multiple ontologies. So they're saying that there's just a different ontology out there other than our material stuff. They're not actually saying what it is. They're just saying there's another one. That's the spiritual stuff. So it'd be like essentially like having an extra dimension or something. Each dimension could be considered an ontology made of a certain kind of thing. Or like silicon-based life versus carbon-based life. They're just different kinds of existing things. And so there could be different kinds of ontologies, like material ontology, a non-material, supernatural, ubernatural, pan-natural, whatever. There could just be a bunch of different kinds of particles, and they just all exist as a different ontologies. So non-physical would just be like the spiritual ontology, which would just be made of soul particles rather than electron particles.
But if the theist is to say that this thing, this immaterial thing, interacts with our physical world, right, the material world, then in principle it should be possible to prove this God, right? Because a lot of theists say that no, we can't find evidence, we can't find scientific evidence for God, but that's just false.
Yeah, you'd technically be able to prove it for sure. If you found a novel testable prediction of the interaction.
Exactly, and then
Locard's principle, if you've ever heard of it.
What is it called?
It's called Locard's principle. It's a principle in forensic analysis. Is basically any contact leaves trace. So if they're claiming there was an interaction of a God by logic, there should be evidence of the interaction.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so just to bring that point home, right? I think they misrepresent science, or at least methodological naturalism, when they say that science says that we can only deal with the material or the natural world, right? They're actively misrepresenting it, because obviously you can have a novel testable prediction if you have access to this immaterial thing and make a prediction in this world. Methodological naturalism is only committed to using the methods of science, not necessarily the ontological commitment, right?
Yeah, exactly. They just misquote a bunch of people and take their quotes out of context. I mean, literally, we just have to start without accepting a God, which is not what it says. Or any supernatural, non-physical stuff. Jonty asks, I have an argument. If logic exists, Mango wouldn't exist. Mango exists, therefore logic does not exist. It's a solid argument.
Definitely.
All right, anybody else got anything before we wrap up? All right, guys, I'm going to head out, take a nap, get some food. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate it. Thanks to Biscuit for having a great conversation. Mike, just joining the chat. What's up? All right. Peace out, guys. I'll see you later.
Have a good one.